Hey guys, Nemo the editor here. I just wanted to say a belated Happy New Year from me. Hope you guys are enjoying the stories just as much as we are, producing and writing them. I wanted to ask you what stories you're most interested in hearing and what more we can do on this channel for you guys. That being said, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that notification button so you never miss a story. Comment down below your suggestions too. Now, enjoy the stories.
I almost didn't go. That's the honest fuck. I was standing in my room staring at the mirror, hoodie half on, phone buzzing with her location update, and I had this weird tight feeling like when you miss a step on the stairs but don't fall. I told myself it was just nerves. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself anything to not cancel because canceling would mean admitting I already felt like something was off before it even started. The place you picked was this late night cafe built into an old bowling alley that shut down years ago. They kept the lanes but turned them into lawn tables, varnished wood with old score screens hanging above like they forgot to take them down. It smelled like burnt coffee and cleaning spray. Everything echoed a little. Even footsteps sounded like they were being followed by more footsteps. I got there early because that's who I am, and because sitting alone is easier than walking in late and feeling watched. She showed up right on time, slid into the chair across from me like we'd known each other forever. She looked normal. That was the scariest part later when I thought about it. No red flags in the first glance. Messy hair, thrifted jacket, chipped nail polish. The kind of person you'd think was harmless because they didn't look like they were trying too hard. She smiled a lot. Her eyes didn't really match the smile, but I didn't clock that yet. We started talking about nothing important. School stories, bad jobs, how weird the cafe was. I noticed there was an empty chair angled slightly toward our table, like someone had pulled it close and then changed their mind. I figured it was left over from earlier. 5 minutes in, maybe less, she leaned back and glanced over my shoulder, casual like it was nothing, and introduced the man sitting nearby as her ex. She said he liked to sit close on her dates now. She said he was there to make sure she didn't settle again. No dialogue, but that sentence landed like a dropped plate. The sound of it kept ringing. I turned just enough to see him. Mid-30s maybe, beard too neat. Jacket still on like he was ready to leave or ready to stay forever. He didn't look surprised to be noticed. He looked like he'd been waiting. His chair was angled perfectly so he could see our table without moving his head. The empty chair suddenly made sense. It wasn't empty. It was reserved. She laughed after saying it like that made it okay. I tried to laugh too. My body did not get the memo. My stomach felt hollow and I skipped a step again. I told myself it was a joke, some weird bit. People do bits. People are awkward. I didn't want to be the guy who couldn't take a joke, so I stayed. As the night went on, he stayed. Didn't move. Didn't order anything. Just sat there, occasionally shifting his foot so it scraped the floor. Every scrape sounded loud. She kept talking, but her attention drifted. She paused mid-sentence and glanced at him, then continued like she was checking for approval. I noticed she changed details when she glanced. A story about quitting a job turned into being fired. A story about a bad date turned into the guy being boring instead of rude. It was subtle, but it stacked up. I asked how long they'd been broken up. She said not long and corrected herself and said a while, then said time was weird. She reached for her drink and knocked it over a little, splashing the table. Before I could grab napkins, he was there. Not standing, just leaning, arms stretched out, already handing her napkins like he practiced. His hand brushed hers. She didn't flinch. She smiled at him without looking. I started to feel like I wasn't on a date. I was on display, like this was an audition and he was the judge. The bowling alley screens flickered overhead, old frames lighting up and going dark. Every time they did, I caught his reflection in the black glass, eyes fixed on us. On me. She told me about how he used to keep lists. Not in a sad way, in a proud way. Lists of things she did wrong, lists of things other guys did wrong. She said it helped her grow. She said growth hurt sometimes. I nodded even though my chest felt tight. I noticed my hands were shaking, not enough to spill anything, just enough that I kept them under the table. Halfway through, she suggested we switch seats so she could see me better. That put my back to him. I agreed because saying no felt worse. As soon as I sat, I felt it. the weight of being watched without being able to watch back. Every sound behind me felt closer, his breathing maybe, or mine. Hard to tell. She started asking me questions that felt like traps. What I'd do if someone corrected me in public. How I handle being told I'm wrong. If I ever get jealous. Each answer I gave felt like it was being measured against something I couldn't see. Sometimes she'd glance past me and nod slightly, like confirming something. I wanted to turn around. I didn't. The cafe got quieter as the night went on. Chairs scraping, a barista yawning, lights dimming a notch. He still hadn't ordered. The staff didn't say anything to him. It was like he was part of the building, like a pillar they built around. At one point, she went to the bathroom. She didn't take her phone. The second she was gone, I felt him shift closer. I didn't turn. I stared at the table, at the water rings, at the scratches in the wood that looked like tally marks. I could feel him leaning in close enough that the air felt warmer. He didn't touch me. That somehow made it worse. She came back and acted like nothing happened. She talked faster. Her leg bounced under the table, knee hitting mine. She didn't apologize. She said she liked that I stayed. She said most people leave when they meet him. She said that told her a lot about them. I realized then that this wasn't new. This was a system, a pattern. He wasn't there by accident. He was part of the process. Maybe the process. She asked if I wanted to go somewhere else. Not together. All of us. She gestured vaguely like there were only 3 chairs in the world and they all belonged together. My mouth went dry. I thought about my car outside, about the quiet drive home, about how easy it would be to just say no and stand up. But my legs felt heavy. The bowling screens flickered again. Strike, gutter, strike, gutter. I said I was tired. That was the truth. She pouted. He stood up. The sudden movement made my heart jump. He towered over the table, stretched like he'd been sitting too long. He finally looked at me directly. No smile, just assessment, like I was a product he'd already decided not to buy. They walked out together. She didn't hug me. She waved like we were classmates passing in a hallway. I sat there for a full minute after they left, listening to their footsteps fade. The empty chair stayed. I didn't move it. I left money on the table, even though we hadn't ordered much. I just wanted to be done. Outside, the air felt cold and thin. My car was still there. Nothing followed me. I drove home in silence, hands steady again, brain replaying every moment like I was trying to find the exact second it went wrong. I didn't find it. It was wrong from the start. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I didn't block her number right away. It buzzed once later that night. I didn't open it. I knew whatever it said would feel like another chair being pulled up too close. Some things don't need to be read to be understood. I knew the date was going bad before it even officially started because my phone died in the rideshare on the way there and I pretended I didn't care. I cared. I remember watching the screen go black and thinking great timing, like the universe had jokes lined up. I still went inside though. The place was this converted shipping warehouse by the river that did pop up food nights. Concrete floors, string lights taped up crooked, food trucks parked inside like they forgot to leave. It smelled like grease and cold air and river water. Loud enough that you had to lean in but not loud enough to disappear. He was already there, leaning against a long table, arms crossed like he was waiting for someone late even though I was on time. He smiled quick when he saw me. It didn't reach his eyes, but I ignored that. I ignored a lot that night. I keep replaying the beginning because it felt so normal that it messes with my head now. Like it started normal, how did it end so wrong? We grabbed food from different trucks and ended up at a tall table near the back wall. The exit was across the room, big metal doors propped open just enough to let cold air in. I clocked it automatically. I always do. I didn't think it meant anything at the time. It was just a habit. He talked a lot. About work, about how people didn't appreciate him, about how he was tired of girls who wasted time. I nodded, chewed, tried to match his energy. Every time I went to reach for my wallet, he waved it off. Insisted. Said it was his thing. I tried again when we ordered drinks and he stepped in front of the counter slightly, card already out. The server didn't even look at me. It felt awkward but not scary yet. Just awkward. When we sat back down, he placed a receipt flat on the table between us, smoothing it with his fingers. I remember that detail so clearly, smoothing it like it mattered. He lined it up with the edge of the table and tapped it once, like punctuation. I laughed because I thought it was a joke. I thought everything was a joke until it wasn't. He leaned back and explained calmly that paying meant something to him, that it showed investment, that when someone accepted that investment, it created balance. He said balance mattered. He said time was the only thing people really owed each other. He kept his voice steady, almost gentle, like he was explaining rules to a kid. My stomach dropped in slow motion. I told him I could pay him back. I reached for the receipt. He placed his hand over it, not touching me, just blocking. He smiled again. He said that wasn't how it worked. He said money was done. Time was next. He glanced at the doors when he said it. Just a flick of his eyes, like a reminder. I laughed again because my body didn't know what else to do. My brain was sprinting, but my face stayed calm. I tried to stand up. My knee bumped the table, and the drinks rattled. He stood too smoothly and stepped sideways without rushing. Suddenly, he was between me and the open space, not close enough to touch, just close enough to block. The room didn't notice. People were laughing, ordering food, living their normal nights. I said I needed air. I tried to step around him. He shifted again, matching me like a mirror. Still calm, still smiling. He didn't raise his voice. That almost broke me. He said I was overreacting. He said we were just talking. He said I was making it weird. Every word landed heavy because the setting was so public. If this was wrong, why did it look so normal? My phone was dead. That thought hit me like ice. I looked around for a worker, anyone, but everyone was busy. I thought about shouting, about making a scene, but my throat felt tight and dry. I hated that about myself in that moment. I hated that I wanted to keep things smooth more than I wanted to be safe. He gestured back to the table. Not a grab, not a shove. Just a suggestion. The receipt was still there, flat and perfect. He said we could finish our drinks and talk it out. He said he wasn't in a rush. That was the worst sentence. I sat because my legs felt like they'd stop working if I didn't. Time stretched weird after that. Every minute felt thick. He talked about how people misunderstood him, how he hated being painted as controlling when he just valued structure. He traced the edge of the receipt with his finger while he talked, over and over, like he was measuring something invisible. I nodded when I thought I was supposed to. I kept my breathing slow because I was afraid he'd notice if it changed. Someone bumped into the table and apologized. I latched onto that interruption like a lifeline. I stood again, this time faster, and said I had to go. I tried to angle toward the doors at the same time, hoping speed would help. He moved quicker than I expected. His arm came out, palm flat against the wall beside the door, not touching me but blocking the space completely. The metal door creaked as the cold air pushed in, then settled. He didn't look angry. That's what sticks with me. He looked patient, like I was late for something and he was waiting. He said I still owed him time. He said he'd pay for it. He said leaving without settling that was rude. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I thought someone would notice. No one did. I finally did the thing I should have done earlier. I raised my voice. Not screaming, but louder. I said I didn't agree to anything. Heads turned. His smile flickered for half a second. Just enough. He stepped back immediately, hands up like he'd never blocked anything at all. He laughed it off, said of course, said I was free to go. He opened the door wider himself. I didn't wait. I walked fast, then faster, then ran once I was outside. The cold hit my face, and I didn't stop until I was halfway down the block. I leaned against a lamppost and tried to get my phone to turn on. It didn't. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped it twice. When it finally lit up, I had missed messages from friends asking how it was going. I didn't answer. I kept walking until I hit a gas station that stood under the bright lights like they were protection. I watched every car that pulled in. I didn't see him. I don't know if he followed for a bit and stopped or never left the warehouse at all. That not knowing sits with me. Later that night, when I was home, I noticed my jacket pocket felt stiff. I pulled out the receipt. I have no idea how it got there. Maybe it brushed against me when he moved. Maybe he put it there. It was folded once, clean crease. I threw it away immediately, but the feeling didn't go with it. I still think about how calm he was, how public it all was, how easy it would have been to stay longer just to avoid the tension. I hate that part the most. Nothing bad technically happened, but something almost did, and that almost feels heavier. Some nights I still picture that receipt on the table, measuring time I never agreed to give. I knew something was off before the food even showed up, not in a spooky way, just in that quiet brain itch way where everything feels slightly misaligned. Like when you put your shoes on the wrong feet and don't notice until you're already outside. I had almost canceled that morning because my stomach felt weird, not sick, just tense. But I told myself that was dumb. I had already told my roommate I was going. I had already ironed a shirt I never ironed. Backing out felt dramatic, so I went. The place was a small neighborhood diner wedged between a nail salon and a closed video store that never reopened after lockdown. Red booths, laminated menus that stuck to your fingers, and a bell above the door that rang every time someone came in. It smelled like fries and syrup, no matter what time it was. She picked it because it was cozy and low pressure. Her word, I liked that. Low pressure sounded safe. She was already seated when I walked in, scrolling on her phone, legs tucked under her like she owned the booth. She smiled when she saw me, normal smile, nothing strange. I remember feeling relieved by that. I remember thinking I was being paranoid for nothing. We ordered food and talked about random stuff. Shows we half watched, places we wanted to go but probably wouldn't. I noticed she asked a lot of questions about me. Not surface stuff either. She wanted details, habits, patterns. I told myself she was just interested. I liked being listened to. I didn't think about how specific her questions were until later. The food came. Plates clattered down. The bell rang again as new people walked in. Halfway through eating, while I was chewing and trying not to talk with my mouth full, a guy I didn't know walked over and asked if he could sit. Not with words I heard, but with a look and a hand already pulling the chair. I froze. I looked at her. She nodded like this was expected. He sat. Then another person joined. Then another. Suddenly, there were 3 strangers at our booth, squeezed in like we were old friends catching up. The diner was crowded, but not that crowded. There were open tables. This wasn't necessity. This was intention. I waited for her to explain. She didn't. She just kept eating, calm, almost amused. The strangers looked at me with these soft expressions, not mean, not threatening. More like concern, like a group intervention vibe you see in movies. My chest tightened. Then they started listing things about me. Not insults, not obvious stuff. They talked about how I avoid conflict even when it eats me alive. How I over-explain because I'm scared of being misunderstood. How I have a habit of minimizing my own needs to keep other people comfortable. Each thing landed heavy because it was accurate. Painfully accurate. Things I had only said out loud in one place. Things I had only admitted to my therapist. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I kept looking at her, waiting for her to stop it, to laugh and say it was a joke. She didn't. She watched me like she was watching a reaction video. The strangers took turns. One mentioned how I catastrophize small mistakes late at night. Another mentioned my tendency to replay conversations in my head until they lose shape. Someone mentioned a specific phrase I use when I'm uncomfortable. Not the phrase itself, but the pattern of it. That broke something in me. The specificity was unreal. I didn't hear any dialogue, but I understood everything. Their mouths moved, their faces stayed gentle, and the words felt like they were being pulled straight from notes I never thought anyone else would see. My heart started racing. I looked around the diner. No one else seemed to notice. Forks scraped. Coffee poured. The bell rang again. I tried to stand. The booth was tight. Knees knocked the table. One of the strangers shifted, not blocking me aggressively, just not making space either. My body felt heavy, like gravity turned up. Finally, she leaned forward and explained, still calm, that she liked to outsource. That she believed in radical honesty. That she had asked people she trusted to help evaluate compatibility. The word evaluate stuck with me, like I was a project, like a form being filled out. I wanted to ask how they knew all that. I didn't have to. One of them casually referenced my therapist by first name. Not a common name, not something you guess. My ears rang. The diner lights felt too bright. I started thinking through possibilities. Hacked emails, social media stalking. Maybe I had overshared online. But some of the things they mentioned were things I had never typed, never posted, never said outside that one room with a couch and a box of tissues. Things I barely remembered saying myself. She watched me spiral. I could see it in her eyes. She liked the control. She liked that she knew something I didn't. She told me not to worry, that this was all meant to help. That feedback was a gift. My hands were shaking so bad I had to put them in my lap. One of the strangers reached across the table and slid my plate closer to me, like reminding me to eat. That small gesture made my stomach turn. Familiarity without permission. They talked about my attachment style, about how I seek approval, about how I have trouble trusting my own instincts. I felt stripped down in a room full of people who weren't looking. I realized then that she hadn't shared anything about herself. Not really. All the depth had gone one way. All the spotlight was on me. This wasn't a date. It was an assessment. I finally pushed back from the table hard enough that the bench squealed. The sound cut through the diner just enough that a couple people glanced over. The strangers paused. She frowned, just a little. I said I was leaving. I didn't wait for space. I squeezed past, bumping knees, not caring anymore. No one grabbed me. No one followed immediately. I walked fast to the door. The bell rang loud as I shoved it open. Outside, the air felt unreal, like I had stepped into a different layer of the day. My hands were still shaking. I walked until my legs hurt. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed distance. My phone buzzed. I almost threw it. A message from her popped up, already typing when I opened it. She said I didn't handle feedback well. She said that was one of the things they mentioned. That sentence made me laugh out loud, sharp and ugly. People on the sidewalk looked at me like I was unhinged. Maybe I was. Later that night, back in my live space, I sat on my bed and tried to make sense of it. I thought about my therapist, about confidentiality, about how impossible it should have been. I checked my calendar. My last session had been 2 days before. I had talked about dating, about fear, about being seen. I never went back to that diner. I never replied to her. I did switch therapists, not because I thought they had done anything wrong, but because the room didn't feel safe anymore. Not after knowing how easily something private could leak into the world and sit across from me in a booth with fries getting cold. Sometimes I still think about those strangers, about how normal they looked, about how they blended back into the diner after I left, probably finishing their meals, probably laughing. I wonder how many other tables they've joined, how many other people they've assessed.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I knew it was going to be one of those nights the second I stepped inside and felt like the room was already leaning on me. Not loud exactly, just crowded in a way that made every sound stick. The bar was under a highway overpass, all concrete and flickering lights, like it wasn't sure if it wanted to be open. My shoes stuck slightly to the floor with every step. I remember thinking I should have worn something easier to run in, which is a weird thought to have before anything even happens. I had told him earlier that week that I don't drink. Not in a dramatic way, just a simple fact. I had even explained why, not in detail, just enough to make it clear it wasn't a phase or a challenge. He reacted fine over text. Said cool, said no problem, said he barely drank either. That should have been the first lie I missed, but I didn't. I wanted this to be normal so badly that I let my brain smooth over the rough parts. He was already seated at the bar when I arrived, elbows spread wide like he needed the space. 2 empty shot glasses were lined up in front of him like placeholders. I clocked them immediately. He smiled big when he saw me, waved too hard, already a little flushed. I told myself it was just the lighting. We sat. I ordered soda water with lime. I always do. It gives my hands something to hold. He ordered fast, not looking at me, voice confident. When the bartender set the glasses down, there were 4 now. Salt on the rims, clear liquid catching the light. My chest tightened. I reminded him gently that I don't drink. I kept my tone light because I didn't want to start the night tense. He laughed. Not at me exactly, more at the situation. He made it a joke for the whole bar. Leaned back, loud, waving a hand like he was doing a bit. He made comments about how everyone needs to loosen up, about how I'd be more fun if I relaxed. He said it like it was harmless, like it was obvious. People nearby smiled awkwardly. Someone actually nodded. The bartender hesitated for half a second, then walked away. That half second felt important, like a door closing softly. He slid one of the shot glasses closer to me. The glass scraped against the bar, loud in my ears. I didn't touch it. I wrapped my fingers tighter around my soda. He leaned closer, still smiling, still joking, telling a story about a girl he dated who said she didn't drink, but totally did once she stopped pretending. He said it loud enough that I felt eyes on me. Heat crawled up my neck. I tried to steer the conversation away, asked about his job, about the place, about anything. He kept circling back, kept making comments about how stiff I seemed, about how a little liquid courage never hurt anyone. He tapped the bar near the shot glass like a countdown. Every time I said no, he reframed it. Said it was being dramatic, said it was just one. Said he had already paid. Said I was embarrassing him by making a big deal out of it. The word embarrassing stuck. It made me feel small and exposed, like I was the problem everyone was watching. Another round appeared without me asking. I don't know when he ordered it. Suddenly there were more glasses, more salt, more pressure. He lined them up again, neat and intentional. He made a show of knocking one back himself, then another. His voice got louder, his movements looser, his attention sharper. He leaned in close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath. Not touching, just close. He said something about how I needed to relax if we were going to have a good night. He said it like a punchline. People laughed. My stomach dropped. I looked around for an exit. The bathroom was behind me. The door was narrow and blocked by a couple arguing quietly. The main door was across the room, past a group of guys watching a game on a tiny screen. It felt far. Everything felt far. I pushed the shot glass away again, this time harder. It tipped and spilled, clear liquid spreading across the bar, dripping onto my jeans. The room went quiet for half a beat. He stared at the spill, then at me. His smile didn't disappear, but it changed, tightened. He made another joke, louder, about how clumsy I was, about how that was exactly why I needed a drink. He laughed. Someone else laughed too, then stopped. I could feel my hands shaking, but I kept them flat on the bar so he wouldn't see. He reached for my glass, not the shot, my soda. He slid it away like it was in his way. He said something about not wanting to babysit, about how this was supposed to be fun. His knee bumped mine. I pulled back. I stood up. The stool scraped loudly. My legs felt unsteady, not from alcohol, just adrenaline. He stood too fast, towering a little. He put a hand on the back of my stool, not on me, but close enough to feel like a boundary being tested. He said something about me overreacting again, about how people were staring now because of me. I didn't care anymore. I grabbed my bag and moved toward the bathroom instead of the exit, thinking I could loop around. The bathroom was crowded. I locked myself in a stall and sat there, breathing shallow, listening to muffled music and laughter outside. My phone buzzed with messages from him asking where I went, then telling me to come back, then telling me to stop being weird. I didn't answer. When I came out, I waited by the sink until the room cleared a bit. I watched my reflection. My face looked pale. My eyes looked older. I practiced walking calmly. Practiced looking normal. I slipped out the main door when no one was blocking it. The cold air hit me hard. I didn't stop walking until I was 2 blocks away. I ducked into a convenience store just to stand under the lights. I bought gum for $2 even though I didn't need it, just so I had a reason to be there. My phone buzzed again. More messages, this time angry, calling me ungrateful, saying I wasted his money, saying I owed him a night. I blocked him with shaking hands. Later, back at my live space, I peeled off my jeans and saw the dried salt stain on my leg where the shot spilled. I scrubbed it in the sink until my skin was red. The smell lingered. I opened a window even though it was cold. I didn't cry right away. I just sat on my bed and stared at the wall, replaying the jokes, the laughter, the way the room seemed to side with him without even meaning to. It wasn't one big thing. It was 100 small ones stacking until I couldn't breathe. The next morning, my throat felt sore like I had been yelling. Even though I hadn't, my head hurt. I threw the gum away unopened. I avoided that part of town for months. I knew it was going to be weird the moment I saw my own name glowing on her phone screen before I even sat down. Not like she showed it to me. It was just there, reflected in the window behind her, bright letters hovering near her face while she scrolled. I almost convinced myself I imagined it. That was the pattern that night. Seeing something off and then talking myself out of it because admitting it felt awkward. The place was a rooftop noodle spot above a parking garage, all plastic chairs and fake plants zip-tied to railings. You could hear cars grinding up the ramp below us every few minutes, the sound vibrating through the floor like distant thunder. It was early evening, that in-between time where the sky looks unsure. I got there a little late because the elevator was broken and I had to take the stairs. I was already out of breath when I sat down. She was filming when I arrived. Not me, herself. Phone propped against a soy sauce bottle, camera angled just right. She wiped at her eyes quickly when she noticed me and flipped the phone face down. I asked if everything was okay in that soft, polite way you ask strangers. She nodded too fast. Said it was nothing, said she was just tired. We ordered food. She kept her phone on the table, face down but buzzing every few seconds. I tried to focus on normal things. The view, the smell of broth, the way the chairs wobbled. I told myself people film everything now. It didn't have to mean anything. 5 minutes in, she excused herself and set her phone back up, this time angled toward the railing, away from me. She didn't go far, just leaned against the edge of the roof, back to me, shoulders shaking slightly. I didn't hear words, just breath and little broken sounds. People at other tables glanced over then away. I sat frozen, fork hovering, not knowing if I was supposed to intervene or give space. She came back to the table and smiled like nothing happened. Her eyes were red. She took a sip of water and scrolled again. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to check in front of her. The food came. She barely touched hers. She asked questions but didn't wait for answers. Nodded a lot. Checked her phone. The buzzing got more frequent. I finally glanced at my screen under the table. A message from a friend asking if I was on a date right now and if something was wrong. My stomach dropped. I opened social media. There it was. A video posted 10 minutes earlier, her crying, saying the date was going terribly, saying she felt unsafe and unheard, saying my name, my full name, tagged, spelled correctly. My face burned. The comments were already rolling in. Strangers picking sides. People I didn't know offering support. Some people asking what I did. I looked up at her. She was watching me now, phone in hand, eyes sharp. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The video kept playing silently in my head. She stood up again and repositioned the phone, this time closer to the table. She sat back down and stared at it like it was a mirror, her eyes filled again on cue. Her shoulders slumped. It felt rehearsed. I felt like a prop. I didn't hear dialogue, but I understood the narrative she was building. Awkward date. Emotionally distant guy. Bad vibes. She adjusted her hair between takes, wiped her face, checked comments, refreshed. Every refresh brought more attention. More people saying she deserved better. More people asking for details. I wanted to leave. My legs wouldn't move. It felt like if I stood up, it would confirm whatever story she was telling. I thought about how it would look on camera. Me walking away, abandoning her. Proof. My phone buzzed again. A message from my sister asking why my name was trending in her city feed. I felt dizzy. The rooftop suddenly felt too high. She angled the phone slightly so I was in frame now, just the edge of my shoulder. I shifted away instinctively. She frowned. Adjusted again. She took a deep breath and started crying harder. People at nearby tables were definitely watching now. One woman leaned over and asked if everything was okay. She nodded dramatically. Didn't look at me. I finally stood up. The chair scraped loudly. The sound cut through everything. A few heads turned fully. She glanced at me, eyes wide, like she was surprised, like this wasn't exactly what she wanted. I walked toward the stairs. My phone buzzed nonstop, notifications stacking. I could feel eyes on my back. Halfway down, I stopped and leaned against the wall, breathing hard. I watched the video again, listened this time. Every word twisted. Small moments exaggerated. Pauses framed as coldness. My silence turned into guilt. By the time I reached the bottom, there were follow-up clips, her thanking people for support, her saying she was ending the date early for her safety, her saying she wished she trusted her gut sooner. My name still tagged. Impossible to escape. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my keys. I didn't know what to do first. Message her, report the video, explain myself. All of it felt useless. The story was already out there. People had already decided. I drove home in a fog. At my live place, I collapsed onto the couch and opened my laptop, searched my name. The video had been shared to a local gossip page. Comments were rougher there. People speculating. People inventing details. Someone posted a blurry screenshot of me for my profile picture. An hour later, she posted one more video. Calm now. Makeup fixed. Saying she was okay. Saying she hoped I learned from this. She never mentioned what I was supposed to have done. She didn't need to. Implication did the work. I messaged her once, kept it short, asked her to remove my name. She blocked me. The video stayed up. Over the next few days, it faded like trends always do, replaced by something else. But traces remained. Screenshots. Comments. People who remembered my name for no reason. I still think about that first reflection in the window, my name floating there before I even sat down. But the ending was already written and I was just catching up to it. I noticed it because my phone felt lighter, like a phantom limb moment that made my heart skip before my brain caught up. I reached for it out of habit, fingers brushing the empty space on the table, and for half a second I thought I had dropped it. That tiny second mattered. It was the first crack. Everything after slid through it. We met at a late afternoon arcade bar that smelled like citrus cleaner and old carpet. Not the kind with loud music, more the sad kind with pinball machines shoved against walls and neon signs buzzing like they were tired. I picked it because it felt public but calm. Booths instead of bar stools. Windows facing the street. Safety and visibility. That was my logic. He showed up early and already had a pile of tokens stacked like poker chips. He joked with the bartender and acted like a regular even though he had told me it was his first time there. That should have stood out. It didn't. I sat down, put my bag next to me, phone, and keys on the table because my pockets were fake and useless. Wallet tucked under my thigh like always. We played one game. Just one. It was fine. Normal. He laughed too loud, but people do that. When we sat back down, I noticed my phone was gone. Then I saw it, in his hand. He was scrolling, not fast, just enough to look casual. He smiled when he saw my face change and said it was nothing. Said he was just getting familiar. He laughed like that made sense. I held my hand out without thinking. He didn't give it back. He set it down near his side of the table instead, closer to him than me. I felt stupid for not grabbing it right then. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I told myself I was overreacting. I stayed. Then he picked up my keys, jangled them, asked which one was for my car. He didn't wait for an answer, he guessed. Laughed when he guessed wrong. He clipped them onto his finger like a ring and spun them slowly. Again, getting familiar, again, laughing. I shifted in the booth, suddenly aware how trapped it felt. He had the outside seat. I had the wall. I hadn't noticed when we sat down. I always notice, except this time. I asked for my things back. I tried to keep it light. He smiled, shook his head, and tucked my keys into his pocket like it was a joke we were both in on. My stomach dropped hard. The room felt louder suddenly. Pinball machines clacking. A kid cheering somewhere. Glasses clinking. I reached for my phone again. He slid it farther away. Not aggressive. Playful. That was the worst part. Playful gives cover. Playful makes you look dramatic if you push back too hard. I stood up. He stood too fast, blocking the edge of the table. He put his hands up like he was calming me down, still smiling, still joking. People glanced over and then away. Nothing looked wrong from the outside. Two people standing, laughing. Normal. I sat back down because my legs felt shaky, because I didn't want to draw attention, because I hated that about myself. He reached across the table and patted my bag like it was his. Then he opened it. Not digging, just peeking. He pulled out my wallet and held it up. Asked if I always carried this much cash. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth felt dry. He flipped through the cards slowly. License, credit card, a receipt I had forgotten to throw away. He commented on my photo, said I looked different now. Older, he laughed. I didn't. I thought about leaving without my stuff, about running out the door and asking the bartender for help, about causing a scene. Every option felt heavy. Every option felt like it would make things worse. He had my phone, my keys, my wallet, my ability to leave cleanly. He told me he liked knowing things, liked patterns, liked knowing where things belonged. He lined my items up on the table in front of him, neat and intentional, like he was organizing a desk. Then he scooped them back up and put them in his jacket pockets one by one. My life redistributed. I felt tears sting my eyes, and I hated that too. I hated giving him that. I stared at the table and tried to slow my breathing. I reminded myself we were in public, that someone would help if I asked, that this wasn't allowed. I asked again for my things, firmer this time. He sighed that I was being difficult. He said I was tense. Said this was why he was trying to get comfortable with me. Said trust went both ways. He leaned back, arms crossed, pockets heavy with my stuff. I slid out of the booth anyway, scraping my knee. The sound was loud. People looked. He didn't move. He watched me stand there awkwardly, trapped between the table and his body. I felt small. I felt stupid. I felt like everyone could see it, but no one knew what it meant. I finally did it. I asked the bartender for help. My voice shook, but it worked. The bartender came over, asked what was going on. He laughed immediately, pulled my phone out and held it up like a peace offering. Said it was just a joke. Handed it back, then the keys, then the wallet. Slow, reluctant, like he was losing a game. The bartender stayed until everything was back in my hands. The weight felt unreal, grounding. I shoved it all into my bag without caring how it looked. He tried to say something else. I didn't listen. I walked out shaking. The door felt heavier than it should have. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. I stood on the sidewalk and checked everything 3 times. Phone, keys, wallet, still there. I sat in my car for a long time before starting it. My hands were still trembling. I watched the entrance in the mirror. He didn't follow. That almost made it worse, like he never thought I would actually leave. Later that night, back in my live place, I kept reaching for my phone just to make sure it was still mine. The feeling lingered. Like something had been taken and given back wrong. Like fingerprints that wouldn't wipe off. I blocked him. I threw the tokens away. I avoided that street for weeks. Sometimes I still feel that lightness, that moment of absence, and my chest tightens before I even know why. I almost missed the date because my shoelace snapped while I was tying it, and for a second I just sat there on the floor staring at it like it was a sign I could still back out. I didn't though. I tied a bad knot, pulled my hoodie on, and left with that low-level dread buzzing in my chest that I kept telling myself was just nerves. I had no idea how much worse that feeling could get once it had a reason. We met at an indoor climbing gym that doubled as a cafe, one of those places that smells like chalk dust and burnt espresso. It was early evening, not too crowded, but not empty either. Ropes creaked overhead. People laughed from the walls. Music played just loud enough to be ignored. She picked it because it was active and different. Her word. Different felt good at the time. She was already stretching when I walked in, phone propped against her water bottle, filming herself tying her shoes. She smiled when she saw me and stopped recording. Nothing weird yet. I told myself I was being hyper-aware. I signed the waiver, rented shoes, tried to act normal. We didn't climb much. Just one easy wall. Mostly we sat at a high table near the windows with smoothies sweating onto paper napkins. She talked fast. About health. About boundaries. about how she liked to test people early so she didn't waste time. That line stuck with me, but I brushed it off. People say things weirdly sometimes. Halfway through, while I was talking about something boring, maybe school or work, she suddenly went quiet. Like a switch flipped. Her eyes rolled back slightly and her body slumped forward out of the chair. Not a slow slide. A drop. Her shoulder hit the table hard. The smoothie tipped and spilled everywhere. My brain went blank for half a second. Then everything hit at once. Sound rushed back in. My heart slammed. I was on my feet immediately, chair scraping loud, calling for help without thinking. People turned. A staff member started moving toward us. I crouched next to her, hands hovering because I didn't know what I was allowed to touch, trying to remember anything I had ever read about emergencies. She lay there still, eyes closed, breathing shallow enough that I had to lean in close to see her chest move. I felt sick, terrified. My hands were shaking so bad I pressed them into my thighs to steady them. I kept looking around, hoping someone more qualified would take over. Then she opened one eye. Just one. Quick, sharp, she smiled. She sat up like nothing had happened, waved off the staff member, laughed a little. Chalk dust puffed off her clothes as she stood. People around us looked confused, annoyed, then slowly went back to what they were doing. The noise level rose again like a wave pulling back. I was still crouched on the floor. My ears were ringing. She looked down at me and tilted her head, studying my face like I was the one who had done something strange. We sat back down. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My stomach felt hollow. She took a sip of her smoothie like it hadn't just been all over the table and floor. She wiped her mouth and then started listing things I did wrong. Not yelling, not cruel. Calm. She said I panicked too fast. Said I drew attention when it wasn't needed. Said I should have checked her pulse instead of calling for help. Said I looked scared and that wasn't reassuring. She said all of this like feedback on a group project. It took a second for my brain to catch up. When it did, I felt heat rush up my neck and into my face. I asked if she was serious. She nodded, said it was a test. Said she needed to know how I handled pressure. Said a lot of people fail that part. I felt stupid, used. My heart was still racing, and she was critiquing my reaction like it was a performance review. I looked around to see if anyone was listening. No one was. It felt unreal how fast the world had gone back to normal for everyone else. She leaned forward and explained how she would have preferred I react next time. Next time. That phrase made my stomach twist. She said I should have stayed calm, grounded her, been confident. She said fear spreads. She said she needed someone steady. I couldn't stop thinking about how real it felt, how my body hadn't known it was fake, how my chest still hurt. She watched me process it, eyes focused, like she was gathering data. I stood up again, slower this time. My legs felt weak. I told her I needed a minute. She nodded like that was acceptable, like she was in charge of granting that. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I sat on the closed toilet lid and put my head in my hands. My heart slowly settled, but the aftershock stayed. My fingers tingled. I kept replaying the moment she dropped, the sound of her hitting the table, the way my body moved without permission. It scared me how deep that reaction went. When I came back out, she was scrolling on her phone. She looked up and smiled, like we had just paused a movie. She asked if I felt better. I didn't answer right away. I didn't trust my voice. We sat there for a few more minutes. She talked about future scenarios, about emergencies, about how compatibility meant knowing someone would act right when it mattered. She asked how I felt about her test. I said I didn't like it. That was the most honest I could be without shaking. She frowned slightly. Said that response told her a lot too. Said defensiveness was a red flag. That word hit hard, like I was being graded again. I grabbed my jacket, told her I was leaving. She looked surprised, genuinely this time. Asked why, but the answer wasn't obvious, like I hadn't just been put through something that left my hands numb. I walked out of the gym without looking back. The cool air outside felt sharp and clean. I leaned against the brick wall for a minute, breathing slow, letting my body catch up to the fact that there was no emergency anymore. On the walk home, my phone buzzed with messages from her. Long ones. Analyzing what happened. Pointing out where I fell short. saying she was disappointed but open to giving it another chance if I reflected. I didn't respond. I blocked her halfway down the block. Later that night, back in my live space, I tried to sleep and couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her fall again. My body reacted again, heart racing, hands cold. I kept thinking about how easy it was for her to fake something that real, how little it mattered to her that it stuck with me. The next day, I had a headache that wouldn't go away. My muscles felt sore like I had run a mile. I kept replaying her calm voice listing my mistakes. It felt like it had carved something into me. Nothing else happened. No big confrontation. No apology. Just that. A fake emergency and a real reaction that I couldn't undo. I should have known from the way he scanned the room before he looked at me. Not a quick glance either. A full slow sweep like he was checking inventory. I remember standing there near the host stand, jacket half off, wondering if he was trying to find someone else. Then he smiled like he just decided I'd do. That thought didn't fully form until later, but it was already there, tucked away. The place was a converted roller rink, turned bar and grill, still huge and echoey with warped wood floors and neon stripes painted along the walls like leftover motion. The booths were made from old benches bolted down. You could hear everything. Laughter carried. Plates clattered like cymbals. It was impossible to disappear, which felt comforting at first. We sat near the center, not tucked away. He said he liked being seen. I laughed because I thought it was a joke. He ordered fast, confident, barely looked at the menu. I ordered after, feeling weirdly rushed. When the server walked away, he leaned back and stretched his arms across the bench like he owned the space around us. It started small. A smile at the server that lingered too long. A comment about her hair that made her pause. I noticed it but brushed it off. Some people are just like that. Outgoing. 30 by default. I didn't want to read into it. Then it kept happening. Every woman who passed our table got something. A look, a comment, the joke. He leaned out of the booth to catch someone's attention. Voice loud enough to carry. He laughed big like he was performing. Sometimes they laughed back. Sometimes they didn't. Either way, he seemed energized by it. I tried to keep the conversation going between us. Asked about his week, about his plans. He answered, but his eyes kept drifting, like he was always half somewhere else. Every time a group of women walked by, his posture changed. Shoulders back, chin up, spotlight mode. At one point, he stood up and leaned against the edge of the booth, half turning his back to me so he could talk to a woman at the bar. Not a quick comment, a whole interaction. I sat there staring at my drink, feeling like a coat left on a chair. People walked by and glanced at me with that look, the one that says, "Are you with him?" I wanted to sink into the bench. He came back grinning like he just won something. Asked if I was having fun. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. My chest felt tight, but I kept my voice steady. I told myself it was early. Maybe he'd settle. He didn't. It escalated. He started rating reactions out loud. Who smiled? Who ignored him? Who he thought would be fun? He said it casually like commentary. I felt my face get hot. I looked around, hoping someone would intervene or that he'd notice how uncomfortable I was. He didn't. The worst part was how he watched me while he did it. Not constantly, but enough, like he was checking my response. Measuring. Sometimes he'd glance back with a smirk, like daring me to say something. I didn't. I felt frozen in this weird mix of embarrassment and disbelief. When the server came back, he leaned in again, louder than before. Joked about how she should come sit with us. She laughed awkwardly and walked away fast. My stomach dropped. I wanted to apologize on his behalf, but that felt wrong too. Like I'd be accepting responsibility for his behavior. I finally asked him to stop. I kept it quiet. Calm. He looked genuinely confused for a second, then amused. He said he was just being friendly. Said I was too sensitive. Said jealousy wasn't a good look. That word hit me sideways. Jealousy, like I was supposed to compete. He stood up again, this time walking a few steps away, leaning on the bar, fully turning his back to me. He started talking to two women like I wasn't there at all. Laughing, gesturing. At one point, he pointed back at our table and laughed harder. I didn't know what he said. I didn't want to. I stared at the scratches on the table, counting them. I thought about leaving. I thought about how it would look. Him getting up alone. Him still laughing at the bar. I imagined the story he'd tell. I felt tired. When he finally came back, he slid into the booth like nothing happened. He asked why I was so quiet. I told him I didn't like what he was doing. He frowned, genuinely offended now. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and asked why I hadn't tried harder. That sentence landed heavy. He said if I really liked him, I would have stepped up, would have pulled his attention back, would have fought a little. He said he liked passion, liked being wanted. He said he was testing chemistry. I felt something snap, quiet but final. I realized there was no right move. If I protested, I was jealous. If I stayed quiet, I didn't care enough. The game was rigged. I told him I wasn't going to compete with strangers for basic respect. My voice shook, but I said it. He laughed, shook his head, said I was missing the point, said dating was about proving value. That phrase made my skin crawl. I slid out of the booth. My legs felt steady now, clear. I grabbed my jacket and bag. He didn't stand this time. He just watched, eyebrows raised, like he was waiting to see if I'd change my mind. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel eyes on me, some curious, some sympathetic. One woman caught my eye and gave a small nod. That helped more than I expected. Outside, the night air felt cool and quiet compared to the noise inside. I stood there for a moment, breathing, letting the echo fade. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Messages from him, confused, annoyed, then accusing, saying I embarrassed him, saying I didn't fight for him and that told him everything he needed to know. I didn't reply. I walked to my car and sat there until my heart rate slowed. I watched people come and go from the rink, laughing, moving on with their nights. Later, back at my live space, I replayed it all. Not just what he did, but how he framed it. How he turned his behavior into my failure. It stuck with me longer than I wanted. Nothing dramatic happened after. No apology. No follow-up worth mentioning. Just that lingering feeling of being put in a contest I never agreed to enter. I realized something was wrong when I caught myself rehearsing my own questions in my head, like I was afraid to say them wrong. That had never happened to me before on a date. Usually I just talk, stumble, correct myself, move on. But that night, before the food even arrived, I had this strange pressure behind my eyes, like I was trying to remember lines from a play I didn't know I was in. We met at a small art house theater that doubled as a cafe, the kind of place with folding chairs, handwritten menus, and walls covered in old posters that smelled faintly like dust and glue. It was quiet in a way that made every sound noticeable. Cups clinking, chairs scraping, whispered conversations that felt too close even when they weren't. She was already there, sitting perfectly still at a corner table, hands folded around a mug like it was part of her posture. She smiled when she saw me, but it was tight, practiced, like a photo smile. I ignored the thought and sat down. At first, everything felt fine, normal even. We talked about the space, the weird short film looping on a projector, the uncomfortable chairs. She laughed at the right moments, nodded when I spoke. There was rhythm to it, almost too clean. I asked about her job, nothing deep. Just a filler question to keep things moving. She answered smoothly, said she worked in marketing, mentioned a downtown office, complained about meetings, all standard. I nodded and moved on. A few minutes later, when there was a pause, I asked again, more specifically this time, what kind of marketing? She blinked, just once. Then said she worked in nonprofit outreach. Different wording, different tone. She talked about grant writing, about community impact. I noticed the shift, but told myself I misheard the first time. Coffee shops are noisy. Brains glitch. The movie ended. The room got a little louder as people moved around. We ordered food. I asked where she was from. She gave me a city 2 hours away. Talked about growing up near the water. Said she moved here for school. Later, when the server asked for her aid for the drink she ordered, I saw the address flash briefly. Different city. Different direction. I didn't say anything. People move. Addresses lag. Not worth making weird. The pattern kept going. Every time I circled back to something she had already told me, the details changed. Her job title shifted. Her timeline adjusted. The reason she moved altered slightly each time, like a story being retold by different people who only half remembered it. I started to feel dizzy, like I was stepping on stones that kept rearranging under my feet. I slowed down, asked fewer questions, listened more, watched her face when she answered. There was a pause before each response now. Not long, just enough to notice, like she was checking something internally before continuing. I asked about her last place she lived. She named a neighborhood. Later, when I mentioned it again, she corrected me and named another. When I said I thought she said the first one, her smile flattened. She tilted her head and said I must have misunderstood. The way she said it made me feel small, like I had failed a test. My chest tightened. I wasn't trying to catch her. I wasn't interrogating. I was just trying to understand the person sitting across from me. But every attempt made the ground feel less solid. Halfway through the meal, I asked about her past work again, trying to anchor something concrete. I framed it carefully. Neutral, open. She stared at me for a second too long. Then she snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, sharp. She leaned forward, eyes locked on mine, and accused me of not sticking to the script. Those exact words, script, like it was obvious, like I was supposed to know. The room seemed to dim around us. I felt heat rush to my face. I asked what she meant, but she waved it off immediately like she had said too much. She laughed it away, said she was joking. Said she just kept circling the same topics, but the laugh didn't reach her eyes this time. It was brittle. After that, everything changed. The rhythm broke. Her answers got shorter, more defensive. Every question I asked seemed to irritate her, even the harmless ones. When I commented on the film posters, she said she hated movies. Later, she said she loved cinema. When I mentioned that contradiction gently, she sighed and said I was overthinking. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was. Maybe I was projecting. Maybe first dates just feel weird sometimes, but the phrase stuck in my head. Not sticking to the script. What script? I tested it without meaning to. I repeated a question I had already asked earlier, word for word. She gave the earlier answer back, not the most recent one. Like she had reverted to an earlier version. My stomach dropped. I realized then that she wasn't lying randomly. She was following something. Maybe notes. Maybe a persona. Maybe a plan. And I was messing it up by remembering. The rest of the date felt like walking through fog. I responded less, nodded more, tried to stay within whatever invisible boundaries she wanted. She relaxed slightly when I did that, smiled again. The tension eased. That scared me more than the snapping. At one point, she excused herself to the bathroom and left her phone on the table. It lit up with a notification. A notes app. I didn't read it. I didn't touch it, but I saw enough to make my stomach twist. Bullet points, short lines, keywords, like reminders. When she came back, she noticed me looking at the phone and flicked it face down fast. Too fast. She watched me closely after that, like she was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I just wanted the night to end. We paid separately. Walked off together. The street was quiet, lit by flickering storefront signs and passing headlights. She asked if I had a good time. I said it was interesting. That felt honest without being confrontational. She smiled, relieved. Said she thought so too, said first impressions mattered a lot to her. Said consistency was important. I nodded even though my head was spinning. We said goodbye, no hug, just a quick wave. She walked off without looking back. I stood there for a minute, breathing in the cold air, trying to ground myself. I replayed the night in my head, lining up the versions of her story like mismatched puzzle pieces. None of them fit together. Maybe none of them were meant to. Later, back at my lit place, I wrote everything down while it was still fresh. Every shift, every correction, every moment I felt like I was the problem. I read it back twice. It felt unreal on the page, like I had imagined it. The next morning, I checked my phone. A message from her. Polite. Brief. Saying she didn't think we were compatible. Saying I made her uncomfortable by pushing for details. Saying she needed someone who could go with the flow. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted the message. There was nothing to respond to. Whatever script she had been following, My role in it was over. I knew the night was going sideways when the hostess smiled at us like we were a matched set, not just polite smile. The kind that lingers, eyes bouncing between two people like she's already filed them under couple in her head. I felt it before I understood it. That soft pressure like being nudged into a lane I didn't pick. We met at a food hall built inside an old train depot, all brick walls and steel beams, the kind of place that echoes even when it's half full. Long communal tables, hanging plants trying their best, string lights that made everyone look a little softer than real life. She chose it because it felt casual and safe. That word again. Safe. She was already there, sitting at one of the lawn tables with her bag placed neatly beside her, jacket folded just so. She smiled when she saw me and stood up like she practiced the timing. Nothing weird yet, just a normal start. We grabbed food from different stalls and sat back down. The table was shared with other groups, strangers close enough to overhear, but far enough to pretend they weren't listening. I noticed people glancing at us, quick looks, nothing lingering. I told myself it was normal. People watch people. The first stranger approached while we were still unwrapping napkins. An older woman with a shopping bag stopped beside our table and smiled at her warmly. She congratulated her, said it was nice to see you on Love, asked how long we'd been together. I froze. I waited for her to correct it, to laugh it off. She didn't. She smiled back, thanked the woman, said something vague with her hands. The woman nodded, satisfied, and walked away. My chest felt tight. I leaned toward her, confused, and she shrugged like it was nothing. Said people assume things. Said it was harmless. I tried to believe her. We ate, talked about surface stuff. The food was good, but I barely tasted it. My mind kept replaying the moment, the way she hadn't corrected it. The way the woman had walked away, convinced of something that wasn't true. Then it happened again. A guy from the next table leaned over and joked about us being cute together. Asked if we met in school or through friends. Again, congratulating. Again, assuming history. Again, she smiled and let it stand. I started to feel like I was lagging behind reality, like everyone else had been briefed and I missed the memo. I asked her if she knew these people. She laughed softly and said no, said the place was just friendly, said I was overthinking. I nodded even though my stomach was twisting. The third time was worse. A couple about our age approached with drinks in hand, grinning. They congratulated her on finally locking it down. Asked how long we'd been official. Used that word, official. They looked at me expectantly. I shook my head slightly confused and said we had just met. The air shifted. Their smiles faltered. They glanced at her. She laughed it off quickly, smoothed it over, said I was joking. Said I'd like to mess around. They laughed uncertainly and walked away, looking back once. My heart was pounding. I stared at her, waiting for an explanation. She looked annoyed now. Said I embarrassed her. Said I didn't have to contradict her in public. That sentence made my skin crawl. Contradict her. Like there was a shared story I was supposed to stick to. I asked what she meant. She sighed, rolled her eyes slightly, and said it was just easier if people thought we were together. Said it avoided questions. Said it made things smoother. Smoother for who? Another stranger stopped by, this time a server refilling water. They smiled and said it was nice to see couples enjoying the space. I felt dizzy. It was spreading, like a rumor with legs. I started noticing patterns. The way she sat closer than necessary when people walked by. The way her hand would drift toward mine, but not quite touch when eyes were on us. The way she nodded along with assumptions instead of correcting them. She was curating something in real time. I asked her directly why she was letting people think that. She looked at me like I was slow, said it didn't matter, said labels were flexible. Said we were on a date, weren't we? I said yes, but that wasn't the same thing. She shrugged and took a sip of her drink, unbothered. The worst part was how natural it seemed to her, like this wasn't new, like she had done this before and knew exactly how it played out. Halfway through, a group of her friends walked in. At least I'd assumed they were her friends. They spotted her immediately and rushed over, excited. They hugged her, then turned to me and congratulated her again. Asked if I was the one she'd been talking about. asked how it felt to finally meet the boyfriend. My head spun. Boyfriend. That word landed heavy. I looked at her, panic creeping up my spine. She laughed, introduced me by name, didn't correct anything else. Her friend smiled at me like I was already approved, like I had passed some unseen test. One of them mentioned an anniversary joke. Another asked how long we'd been keeping it quiet. I opened my mouth to speak and she shot me a look. Subtle. Warning, I closed it. I felt trapped in a story I didn't write. Every correction felt like it would make me the bad guy. Every silence made me complicit. I hated that choice. They left after a few minutes, waving and smiling. As soon as they were gone, I told her this wasn't okay, that I didn't agree to any of it. She frowned, defensive now, said I was being dramatic, said it was just words, said I should relax and enjoy the night. I pushed my food away. My appetite was gone. I asked her how long she'd been telling people we were together. She hesitated, just a beat, then said she hadn't said that exactly. Said people just assumed because she talks about dates. Said she didn't correct them because it felt pointless. The lies were stacking, small and slippery. My chest felt tight again. Another stranger approached, this time an older guy with a camera, asking if we wanted a photo together. Said couples loved photos here. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly. Heads turned. I said no, firmly. The guy looked startled and walked away. She stared at me like I'd just broken something fragile, said I didn't have to be rude, said I was ruining the vibe. I didn't care anymore. The vibe could burn. I grabbed my jacket and bag. My hands were shaking, but my head felt clear for the first time all night. She asked where I was going. I said I was leaving. She looked genuinely shocked, like this ending wasn't in her plan. As I walked toward the exit, someone else called out congratulations. I didn't turn around. Outside, the night air felt cold and real, the noise from inside muffled behind the heavy doors. I leaned against the brick wall and breathed until my heart slowed. My phone buzzed immediately. Messages from her. Confused. Annoyed. Saying I overreacted. Saying I embarrassed her in front of people who mattered. I didn't respond. I blocked her instead. My hands were steady when I did it. On the walk home, I replayed the night, every smile, every assumption. Every time she let a stranger define us without my consent. It felt less like a date and more like an audition for a role she had already cast. Later, back at my live place, I checked social media out of habit. There it was. A photo someone had posted from the food hall. Blurry, taken from a distance. Me and her at the table. Captioned with congratulations. Comments speculating how long we'd been together. I reported it. It got taken down eventually, but the feeling stuck. Like I had been temporarily rewritten without permission. Nothing else came of it. No apology. No explanation that made sense. Just that strange night where everyone seemed to know my relationship status better than I did. I felt it before she even said it. That tug like someone grabbing the back of your shirt when you're already walking forward. We were standing outside the place, receipts still warm in our hands, and the night felt unfinished in a way that made my stomach uneasy. I remember thinking if I didn't leave soon, something would get decided for me. The date started normal enough. Too normal, honestly. Coffee shop near campus, the kind with cracked couches and flyers stapled to every surface. It smelled like burnt espresso and wet jackets. She got there late and apologized a little too smoothly, like she practiced something casual. I didn't care. I was just glad she showed. We talked about light stuff, classes, random internet videos, how weird the weather had been. Nothing deep, nothing heavy. I remember noticing how often she checked her phone, not like scrolling, more like checking a map. At the time, I thought she was just distracted. After coffee, she suggested we walk. The street was busy, lots of lights, open stores, people everywhere. I felt relaxed for the first time that night. Walking makes things feel less intense. We passed a bus stop and she slowed down, looked at the posted route map longer than necessary. That's when she brought it up. The second location. She said the night felt young. Said she didn't want it to end yet. That part was fine. Flattering even. Then she explained where she wanted to go. It wasn't nearby. Not even close. She said it was this spot she loved. Quiet, beautiful, worth the drive. She said it was outside town, past the last strip mall, past where the streetlights thin out. She said it casually, like she was suggesting dessert. I hesitated. Not dramatically, just enough. I said it was kind of far. She laughed and said distance was relative. She pulled up directions on her phone and turned it toward me. The screen showed a long stretch of dark road with barely any landmarks. 40 minutes each way. I said maybe another time. I said I had an early morning. I said we could keep walking instead. Her smile faded just a little. Not gone, just tightened. She pushed again. Said she didn't like ending dates in boring places. Said she hated being cut off mid-vibe. She said she would drive. That part made my chest tighten. I hadn't even thought about who would drive until she said it. The idea of being in her car, going farther and farther from town, made my skin crawl. I told her I wasn't comfortable going that far. I tried to keep my voice calm, reasonable. She stopped walking completely. People float around us like water around a rock. She stared at me like I just insulted her. Asked why I didn't trust her. That word landed heavy. Trust. Like it was something I owed her already. Like not giving it was a flaw. I explained again. Said it wasn't about her. Said I just didn't want to go that far tonight. Her jaw tightened. She crossed her arms and said I was being controlling. That one caught me off guard. I hadn't told her what to do. I had just said what I wouldn't do. She started listing reasons it was a good idea. Said it was secluded, said there were no crowds. Said we could talk without interruptions. Every reason made it worse. Every word painted a picture I didn't want to be in. I suggested we call it a night. That was the breaking point. Her voice went sharp. She said I was wasting her time. Said she didn't come all this way just for coffee and a walk. Said she expected more effort. I looked around. The street suddenly felt louder, brighter. People passing by glanced at us. I hated that. I hated feeling like a scene was forming around me. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. Said the second location was important. Said she always did this. Said it was how she figured out if someone was serious. That sentence made my stomach drop. Like this was a test and I was failing it. I told her again I wasn't going. Firmer this time. My hands were shaking, but I kept them at my sides. She scoffed and rolled her eyes. Said she should have known. Said I was just like the others. Then she said something that stuck. She said if I didn't go with her now, there was no point in continuing. She said it like an ultimatum, but also like a promise. Like there was something waiting out there that I was refusing to step into. I stood there for a second, feeling that pressure again. The urge to smooth things over. To agree just to make the tension stop. I hate that instinct. I hate how strong it is. I said I was done. I said I was going home. Her face hardened completely then. No smile, no softness. She said I led her on. Said I was afraid of commitment. Said I wasted her night. She pulled out her phone and started typing fast. I don't know who she was messaging. Maybe a friend. Maybe a ride. Maybe someone else already waiting. That thought made my chest tighten again. I took a step back, then another. She didn't follow. She just watched me like I was making a mistake she would later explain to someone else. I walked toward the bus stop even though I didn't need the bus. I just wanted distance. I sat on the bench and stared at the pavement while my heart slowed down. I kept thinking about how easily that night could have gone differently if I had said yes. How normal it would have seemed from the outside. Just two people going somewhere quieter. My phone buzzed. A message from her popped up, already angry. Saying I judged her. Saying I disappointed her. Saying I wasn't who she thought I was. I didn't respond. I blocked her instead. The bus came and went. I stayed sitting there until the street emptied out a bit. When I finally walked home, every dark stretch of road felt heavier. Not because something was happening, but because something almost did. Later, back at my live place, I replayed the night from the start. The map glances. The way she framed distance like a test. The anger when I said no. It all lined up in a way I didn't like. I checked my phone once more before sleeping. Nothing new, no apology. No explanation. Just silence where pressure had been. The next day, I felt embarrassed for how shaken I was. Nothing technically happened. We just disagreed. but my body didn't see it that way. My body knew something crossed a line before my brain fully caught up. Sometimes I still think about that road on the map, the long dark stretch with no landmarks. I wonder how many people said yes. I wonder how many didn't. I didn't feel scared until after I was already in the car, which is the part that messes with me the most. During the date itself, everything felt mildly off but manageable, like background noise you learn to ignore. It wasn't until the door shut and the locks clicked at my chest tightened for real, like my body waited until it knew I was alone to react. We met at a late-night dumpling place squeezed between a laundromat and a closed pharmacy. Fluorescent lights, sticky tables, a TV bolted high on the wall playing something muted. The kind of place people go after bars close. He picked it because it was casual and open late. I liked that at first. Late feels honest sometimes. He was polite in that overly attentive way that feels rehearsed. Pulling out chairs, refilling my water before I noticed it was low, asking questions back to back without waiting for full answers. I chalked it up to nerves. First dates are awkward. Everyone wants to make a good impression. The conversation jumped around a lot. Hobbies, work, random childhood stories. Nothing too personal, but I noticed he remembered every small detail I mentioned. Street names, favorite snacks, the exact time I said I usually went to bed. It felt flattering in the moment, like he was really listening. When the check came, I said I was heading out. It was late and I had an early morning. He nodded, said he had a good time, didn't push. That should have been the end of it. Outside, the air was cold and damp. The street was quiet except for the hum of a bus a block away. I ordered an Uber and told him it was on the way. He asked which direction I was headed. I kept it vague. Just said home. The car pulled up a minute later. I got in, buckled, and watched him step back onto the sidewalk. The door closed. The car started moving. That was the moment my shoulders dropped. Date over. Done. My phone buzzed before we made it to the end of the block. A message from him. Casual. Saying he was glad I got a ride. I smiled to myself and put the phone face down. I didn't want to be on it in front of the driver. It buzzed again, then again. I picked it up and my stomach flipped. He was describing the route. Not vaguely, specifically, mentioning the street we had just turned onto, pointing out a quicker way, correcting the driver's turn before the driver even realized it was a turn. I stared at the screen, then at the window. The map on my Uber app showed the blue line moving forward. His texts matched it perfectly. Not delayed, not guessing, live. I told myself maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe he was just familiar with the area. But then he mentioned a side street we hadn't reached yet. The next turn. The driver took it. My heart started pounding. I looked at the app again. The blue line adjusted. His next message adjusted with it. He commented on traffic ahead. Suggested an alternate route. Said the driver should avoid a light that always backed up. I didn't respond. My fingers felt numb. The car felt suddenly very small. The driver hummed along to the radio, completely unaware. I checked my settings. Location sharing. Nothing obvious. I hadn't shared my trip. I hadn't sent him my address. I hadn't even told him which neighborhood I lived in. My hands, my phone, my bag, everything was still with me. Another message came in. He corrected the driver again. This time, he mentioned a landmark I could see out the window. A mural on the side of a building we were passing. My throat went dry. I typed a response and deleted it. Typed another and deleted it too. I didn't know what to say without making it worse. I didn't know if acknowledging it would encourage him. The car slowed at a light. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. The blue line paused. His messages paused too. When a light turned green, both moved again. I realized then that he wasn't just tracking. He was watching. Actively, like this was something he expected to be able to do. I leaned forward slightly and asked the driver if everything looked normal on his end. He nodded, said traffic was light, nothing weird. I didn't know how to explain without sounding unhinged. My phone buzzed again. This time he commented on the driver's speed. Said it was a little fast for that stretch. My hands started shaking. I turned the phone face down again like that would make it stop. It didn't. Buzz. Buzz. I picked it up and saw he had sent a screenshot. A map view. My route. The blue line. My location marked clearly. Exactly where I was. I felt sick. I asked the driver to pull over at the next well-lit spot. My voice came out thinner than I wanted. He glanced at me in the mirror, surprised but compliant. We stopped outside a convenience store. Bright lights. People inside. I got out of the car without thinking, stood on the sidewalk clutching my phone like it might disappear. I canceled the ride and ordered another one immediately, choosing a different pickup point a block away. My phone buzzed again. He commented on the stop, asked why we pulled over, mentioned the store by name. I blocked him. The silence after blocking felt loud. My chest still hurt, but at least the buzzing stopped. The second Uber arrived. I got in, heart still racing, and watched the app closely. No messages this time. No commentary, just the blue line moving. I didn't relax until I was inside my lit place with the door locked behind me. I leaned against it and slid down to the floor, breathing hard. My phone was still in my hand. I checked it again, half expecting messages to push through anyway. Nothing. Later that night, after I had calmed down enough to think, I went through every app, every permission, every setting. I found it eventually. Earlier that evening, when we were looking at photos on his phone at the table, he had suggested we add each other on a map app. Said it was easier than sharing addresses. Said it was temporary. I had agreed without thinking and forgotten immediately. Temporary meant nothing to him. I turned it off, removed him, double-checked everything. I barely slept that night. Every car sound outside made me tense. The next morning, there was one message waiting in a different app I forgot to block, short, cheerful, saying he hoped I got home safe and that the driver missed a faster route near the end. I deleted it, then deleted the app, then sat on my bed staring at the wall while my heart slowed down again. Nothing else happened after that. No more messages, no follow-ups, but the feeling stuck. The feeling of being watched from a distance, the feeling of a blue line moving while someone else narrated it. Even now, every time I open a ride app, I double-check who can see me. Every time my phone buzzes in a car, my stomach drops before my brain catches up. I didn't expect the night to turn weird over soup. That's what still froze me. Not a dark alley, not a sketchy bar, just a warm little place that smelled like garlic and broth and felt like the kind of spot where nothing bad ever happens. I remember thinking that I finally picked a normal one. That thought didn't last. We met at a family-owned noodle shop on the edge of town, the kind wedged between a hardware store and a pet groomer. Laminated menus, fish tank bubbling in the corner, old photos of the owners taped crookedly on the wall. It was quiet except for slurping and the clink of spoons. Safe quiet. Boring quiet. I needed boring. She showed up right on time, smiled, took off her coat neatly, folded it on the chair like she was settling in for something longer than dinner. I didn't clock that until later. At the time, it just felt polite. We ordered, talked about random stuff, nothing heavy. She laughed at my dumb jokes. She asked about my job, my commute, where I lived. All normal first date things. The food came out steaming. I burned my tongue on the first bite and laughed it off. She watched me closely when I did, like she was filing it away. I noticed but didn't know why it bothered me. Halfway through the meal, she leaned back and asked who inherits my things. Not in a dramatic way, not whispering. Just casual, like she was asking if I had siblings or pets. My brain stalled for a second. I thought I misheard. I asked her to repeat it in my head, not out loud, trying to make it make sense. She clarified by listing examples. My car, my computer, personal stuff. She said it lightly, smiling, stirring her soup. My chest tightened. That wasn't a first date question. That wasn't even a second or third. That was a never question. I shrugged awkwardly and said I hadn't really thought about it. That was true. I'm not a dramatic planner. I'm in my 20s. Inheritance feels like something for way later. She laughed and shook her head, amused. She said most people are unprepared. She said it like an observation, not a warning. Like she was pointing out a common mistake. The word unprepared stuck in my head. It echoed, I tried to steer the conversation away, asked about her hobbies, about the photos on the wall. She answered, but she kept circling back to the same theme without saying it directly. Planning, contingencies, what happens if. She asked if I had a will. I said no, laughing nervously. She smiled again, wider this time. Said that was normal. Said normal doesn't mean smart. She said it like a joke, but her eyes stayed on me, measuring. I felt a chill creep up my arms. The restaurant suddenly felt too warm. The fish tank bubbled louder than before. I took a sip of water just to have something to do with my hands. She started talking about how quickly things can change. Accidents, random events. She didn't give examples, but my brain filled them in anyway. She said people like to pretend nothing will happen to them. She said preparation was a form of self-respect. I nodded because disagreeing felt wrong somehow, like I was failing another test. I didn't like that feeling. She asked about my family next, how close I was to them, who would be affected if something happened to me. She phrased it gently, but the direction was clear. Every question pointed forward into a future I hadn't invited her into. I tried to joke, said I planned on lived a long time. She smiled politely but didn't laugh. She said plans don't always work out. She said that was certainty, not pessimism. Certainty is scarier. I started to feel watched, even though we were alone at the table. Like the walls were listening, like the old photos were witnesses. My appetite disappeared. The soup went untouched, steam fading. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, scrolling briefly. She didn't show me anything. She just glanced at it and nodded to herself. Then she asked if I owned my place or rented. I said rented. She asked if I had roommates. I said no. She nodded again. That nod felt wrong, too satisfied. I asked why she was asking all this. She waved it off, said she liked to know who she was spending time with. Said transparency mattered to her. Said people hide too much. Her tone was calm, almost soothing, like she was trying to reassure a nervous animal. I didn't feel reassured. I felt like a form being filled out. She joked again about how unprepared people are, this time mentioning how messy it gets when there's no plan. Paperwork, confusion, families fighting. She said it like she'd seen it up close. Maybe she had. Maybe that was innocent. But the way she tied it back to me made my skin crawl. I pushed my bowl away and said I was full. She frowned slightly, like that wasn't the response she wanted. She asked if something was wrong. I said I was just tired. That was easier than explaining the knot in my stomach. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, lowering her voice even though no one was listening. She said she didn't mean to scare me. She said she just thought it was interesting how people avoid thinking about the inevitable. That word landed hard. Inevitable. I glanced at the door. The bell above it chimed as someone left. The cold air rushed in for a second and I wanted to follow it out. She asked if I had life insurance. I stared at her. I couldn't help it. My face must have shown everything I was thinking because she laughed quickly and said she was kidding. But it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like backtracking. I said I needed to go. My voice sounded steady even though my heart was racing. She looked disappointed, not upset, like she had more to say and time ran out. We paid separately. She watched closely as I put my card back in my wallet, like that mattered. Outside, the night air felt sharp and real. I breathed deeper without meaning to. She walked with me toward the parking lot, still talking, still casual. She mentioned again how people should really get their affairs in order early. She said it saves everyone trouble later. I nodded, eyes fixed on my car. At my door, she smiled and said she had fun. Said she liked how thoughtful I seemed. Thoughtful. I didn't feel thoughtful. I felt rattled. I got in my car and locked the doors immediately, not because I thought she would do anything, but because my body told me to. I sat there for a minute, hands on the steering wheel, replaying the conversation in my head. Every question, every nod, every smile that lingered too long. My phone buzzed as I pulled out of the lot. A message from her, light and friendly, saying she hoped I got home safe, adding a comment about how safety really matters. I didn't respond. Later, and back at my live place, I walked around checking things I never check. Doors, windows. I laughed at myself while doing it, but I still did it. I sat on my couch and thought about how normal the night looked from the outside. Two people eating soup, talking, smiling. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just been counted, like my life had been mentally sorted into categories I never agreed to share. The next morning, I woke up to another message from her, asking if I'd ever thought more about what we talked about. I deleted it without opening, blocked her after. Nothing else happened. No threats. No follow-ups. Just that lingering discomfort. That sense of being looked at not as a person, but as a list of things. Sometimes when I put my keys down or toss my wallet on the table, I think about that question again. Who inherits your things? And I feel that same tightness in my chest, like the night never fully ended. The first time he stepped in front of me, I thought it was an accident. That's the part that still bugs me. My brain wanted it to be nothing so badly that it kept offering excuses before fear could get a word in. If I'm honest, the night had already felt off, but I hadn't given myself permission to name it yet. We met at a late-night dessert diner on the edge of a strip mall, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a menu that's way too long. Neon lights buzzed in the windows, reflecting back on themselves, so everything looked doubled. It smelled like sugar and burnt coffee. I picked it because it was open late and always busy. I liked busy. She was already there, sitting in the booth closest to the wall. I took the outside seat without thinking. That detail matters later. She smiled wide when I showed up, a little too fixed, like she was holding it in place. I shrugged it off and slid in. Conversation started fine. Light stuff. Dumb stories. She laughed at the right times. Nodded a lot. Every once in a while she'd tilt her head and look at me like she was waiting for something specific. I couldn't tell what. About 20 minutes in, I checked the time on my phone and said I should probably head out soon. Early morning. Long day. Nothing dramatic. I pushed my hands against the booth to stand up. She stood too. Fast. She moved into the narrow space between the booth and the table, blocking the aisle with her body, not touching me. Just there, smiling. She told me to relax like it was a joke, like she was teasing me for being uptight. I laughed awkwardly and sat back down. I told myself I had misread it. People stand up when others stand up. That's normal. We ordered another round of dessert even though I didn't want it. I didn't know how to say no without making it weird. She talked more now, faster, like she was trying to fill space. I nodded along, eyes drifting toward the door every so often. 10 minutes later, I tried again. Said I really had to go. I shifted my legs, stood halfway. She did it again. Same movement, same smile, same word, relax. This time, my stomach dropped. Not panic, not yet. More like a warning light flicking on. My heart picked up speed. I glanced around. Other people were eating. Laughing. A server walked by without looking at us. I sat back down again, slower this time. My hands were shaking slightly, so I folded them together to hide it. She watched me like she was proud of something. I tried to steer things toward a natural ending. Said I had fun. Said we should do this again. She nodded enthusiastically, said yes. Said we had plenty of time tonight, though. Plenty of time. That phrase felt heavy. I waited a few more minutes and tried a third time, this time more decisively. I slid out of the booth before fully standing, aiming to step past her. She shifted sideways instantly, matching me like a mirror. Still smiling. Still calm. She said the same word again, softer this time, like she was soothing a kid. Relax. My chest tightened. My brain finally stopped offering excuses. This wasn't accidental. This was deliberate. I sat back down hard enough that the booth squeaked. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I told her I was serious. I told her I needed to leave. My voice sounded thin to me. She tilted her head, smile fading just a touch, and asked why I was being so tense. She said we were having a good time. She said I was ruining the vibe. She said people leave too early all the time and regret it. I looked at the door again. It felt farther now, like the room had stretched. I told myself to stand up and just go, to make a scene if I had to, but my body didn't move. Fear is quiet sometimes. It convinces you to wait for a better moment that never comes. A server came by to clear plates. I took that chance and stood up fast. Chair scraped loud. I stepped toward the aisle. She stepped too. Closer this time. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel her presence in my space. She smiled wider, eyes locked on mine, and said the word again. Relax, slower, firmer. The server paused, looked at us, then kept walking. My mouth went dry. My hands curled into fists at my sides without me deciding to. I asked her to move. She laughed lightly like I had said something silly. Said I was overthinking. Said I wasn't going anywhere yet. That sentence hit me hard. Not a question. Not a suggestion. A statement. I sat back down again because I didn't know what else to do. My thoughts were racing now. How to get out. How to not make it worse. How to get someone else's attention. She launched into a story about her day like nothing happened. Voice bright, hands animated. Every few seconds she'd glance at the door, then back at me like she was checking something off. I waited until she looked down at her phone and stood up fast. This time I didn't hesitate. I stepped toward the aisle with purpose. She blocked me again, but this time she frowned. The smile dropped completely. She said I was being dramatic. She said I needed to calm down. She said people were staring now because of me. That flipped something in me. I raised my voice just enough to carry. Not yelling, but louder than before. I said I needed to leave and she was blocking me. Heads turned. The room shifted. The server from earlier looked back. She stepped aside immediately. The change was instant, like a switch. She laughed, put her hands up, said she was just kidding. Said of course I could go. Said I didn't have to make it weird. I didn't wait. I walked past her, heart pounding, legs shaky. I didn't look back until I was at the door. She was already sitting back in the booth, phone out, scrolling like none of it mattered. Outside, the night air hit me hard. I sucked in a breath I felt like I'd been holding for an hour. My hands were shaking so bad I shoved them in my pockets. I stood there for a minute just breathing, watching cars pass, my phone buzz. A message from her popped up, light and casual, asking if everything was okay and telling me to relax. I blocked her without replying. On the walk home, every doorway made my shoulders tense. Every person behind me made me speed up. My body was still on high alert even though the threat was gone. Later, back at my lib place, I sat on the edge of my bed and replayed the night in my head. Not just the blocking, but the smile. The way she used calm like a weapon. The way she made it seem like I was the problem for wanting to leave. Nothing else happened after that. No follow-up. No apology. Just silence. But that word stuck with me. Relax. It pops into my head sometimes when I'm trying to leave a place or end a conversation. And every time it does, my chest tightens like I'm back in that booth again, someone smiling in the doorway. I knew the night was going to turn when I felt that slow heat crawl up the back of my neck, the kind that shows up before your brain has caught up. Nothing had happened yet. We were still sitting there, drinks untouched, music low, the kind of place people bring first dates because it looks safe in photos. But my body was already ahead of me, already trying to leave. We met at a wine bar tucked under an apartment building, half basement, half street level. Long mirrors behind the bar made the room look deeper than it was. Candles on every table. Soft lighting that hides things instead of showing them. She picked it. Said she liked places that felt intimate without being loud. I agreed because I didn't want to argue before we even started. The date itself started fine. Worrying even. Small talk. Jokes that landed okay. Nothing electric, but nothing awful. I remember thinking this would probably just end politely with no follow-up, which honestly felt like a win lately. I relaxed a little. That was my mistake. She talked a lot about the internet. Not in a normal scrolling way, but in a strategic way. Platforms. Reach. How fast things move if you say the right thing. I nodded along, pretending to understand. I thought it was just her thing. Everyone has a thing. About 30 minutes in, the conversation drifted into personal territory. She asked about past relationships. I answered generally, kept it light. When she pushed for details, I pulled back a little. Nothing dramatic. Just said I preferred not to go too deep on a first date. A boundary. Simple. Calm. Her smile didn't fade. It sharpened. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs slowly, and said she understood boundaries. said she respected them. Then, quietly, almost casually, she said she could ruin me online if she wanted to. Not loud, not angry, like she was stating a fact about the weather. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like a fall. I laughed reflexively because my brain thought it had to be a joke. Her face didn't change. She reached for her phone and unlocked it. She told me she was joking, but not really. That was the vibe. She tilted the screen just enough that I could see the Notes app open. Blank at first. Then she started typing. I watched words appear line by line. Vague but loaded. About red flags. About unsafe behavior. About a guy who didn't respect women. No name yet. Just a shape forming. My chest tightened. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that. I told her I didn't do anything wrong. My voice stayed steady somehow, even though my hands were starting to shake under the table. She nodded, still typing, said that comfort was subjective. She explained it like a lesson. Said narratives matter more than facts. Said timing is everything. Said people believe the first version they hear. Her thumbs moved fast. Practice. I looked around the room. Other couples leaned in close, laughing softly, unaware. The bartender polished glasses. The exit felt very far away. She glanced up at me and asked if I wanted her to stop. Not really asking. More like checking how much leverage she had. I said yes. Please. She paused, then kept typing. Said she was just drafting. Said drafts don't hurt anyone. She added more details. Still vague, but sharper now. Words that could mean a lot of things. Words that could be filled in by strangers with imagination and anger. She mentioned age, location, a hobby I had brought up earlier. Enough to identify me if someone tried. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. I told her again that this wasn't okay, that I was setting a boundary, that I wanted to leave. She smiled softly and said boundaries go both ways. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said she didn't like being told no in public. She said it made her feel exposed. She started a new draft. This one was shorter, more emotional, about disappointment, about feeling threatened, about trusting the wrong person. She added a sad emoji at the end and then deleted it, replacing it with another. She was workshopping my reputation in real time. I felt trapped in my chair. If I stood up, what would she write next? If I stayed, what did that say? Every option felt bad. I asked her to put the phone down. She did, but only for a second. Then she slid it across the table toward me, screen up, like she was offering proof. She said she had followers. Said she had friends who amplify. Said things snowball fast. I stared at the phone. My reflection stared back, warped in the glass. I didn't touch it. I told her I was leaving. I stood up slowly, deliberately. My legs felt weak, but they worked. She stayed seated, watching me, thumbs hovering over the screen. She said she hoped I'd reconsider how I treat people. She said accountability matters. She said she didn't want to post anything she'd regret. That last part felt like a threat wrapped in fake concern. I took a step back from the table. My chair scraped loud. A couple nearby glanced over. I wished I could explain without explaining. I wished someone would just know. She unlocked her phone again. I saw the cursor blinking at the end of a sentence. Waiting. I said her name quietly, asked her to stop. She looked up at me with something like disappointment, like I'd failed an exam. She said she could finish the post in under 5 minutes if she wanted to. She said she was being generous by letting me walk away. I didn't respond. I turned and walked toward the stairs. My heart was racing. Every step felt too slow. I expected her to call out. She didn't. Outside, the air felt cold and sharp. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard, checking my phone compulsively even though I knew nothing would be there yet. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I walked 3 blocks before sitting on a bench and opening social media. I searched my name. Nothing. I refreshed. Nothing. I waited. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A notification. Not a post. A message from her. Calm. Friendly. Saying she hoped I got home safe. Adding that she decided not to post anything because she didn't want drama. I didn't reply. I blocked her everywhere I could think of. Then I kept checking anyway, like blocking was a superstition instead of protection. Back at my live place, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and stared at the wall. My chest still felt tight. I kept replaying the way she typed. How easy it was. How confident. Nothing ever got posted. Not that I saw. No vague threads. No callouts. Maybe she meant it. Maybe she didn't. The not knowing was its own kind of damage. For weeks after, every notification made my stomach drop. Every time someone I barely knew viewed my story, I wondered why. I reread old messages looking for things that could be twisted. I thought about how fragile a reputation really is. Sometimes I still picture that blinking cursor waiting, like my life paused for a moment while someone decided what story to tell about me. I didn't notice the first photo when it happened. I noticed it later, when my brain replayed the night frame by frame like it was trying to warn me retroactively. That's how it always goes with stuff like this. The moment passes as normal, and it doubles back and taps you on the shoulder when you're already home, and it's too late to pretend it didn't happen. We met at a rooftop movie night above an old office building downtown. Folding chairs, sheet blankets, a projector aimed at a white wall that still had old company logos faintly visible underneath. The wind kept pushing the screen so the image bent and warped. It was supposed to be casual and cute. That's why I said yes. He got there early and saved seats. He waved his phone at me when I arrived, not in a weird way, just like he was checking the time or something. I smiled and sat down. I remember feeling relaxed. I remember thinking this might actually be fine. The movie started late as these things always do. We talked quietly while people settled in. He asked normal questions, laughed at my answers. Nothing off yet. When the screen finally lit up, the light washed over everyone's faces, flickering, hiding details. That mattered more than I realized. Halfway through the movie, I noticed the glow of his phone out of the corner of my eye. I assumed he was texting. People text during movies. I glanced over and saw my face reflected faintly on his screen. I told myself it was the camera flipped accidentally. I told myself I was being paranoid. The second time it was clearer. The phone angled slightly. The screen tapped. A soft click sound swallowed by the movie audio. My stomach tightened. I turned my head and he lowered the phone quickly, smiling like nothing happened. I didn't say anything. I didn't know how without sounding dramatic. I shifted in my seat, pulled the blanket up higher, angled my body away slightly. I tried to focus on the movie, but my attention kept drifting back to him. Every few minutes, the glow again. Always brief, always subtle, always when he thought I wasn't looking. I finally asked what he was doing. He laughed and said he was just checking messages. Said his friend was annoying. He showed me the screen for half a second. Messages were there. Maybe they were. I didn't have time to really see. The movie ended. People clapped awkwardly. Chairs scraped. Everyone stood up at once. I felt relieved, like the tension would evaporate with the credits. It didn't. We walked toward the stairs together. He held his phone at chest level, pointing it out over the city view. I thought he was taking skyline photos. Later, I realized how easy it would have been to tilt it just enough. We said goodbye at the bottom of the stairs. Quick hug. Nothing weird. I went home thinking maybe I imagined the whole thing. My brain kept trying to smooth it over. That's its favorite trick. It wasn't until 2 nights later that it snapped into focus. I was scrolling through a forum I shouldn't have been on. Not for bad reasons, just one of those niche places where people share random local stuff. Events, photos, gossip. I clicked a thread about the rooftop movie night because I was bored. Halfway down the page, I saw myself. Not tagged, not named, just there, sitting in a folding chair under a blanket, face lit by the screen. My heart slammed into my ribs. I scrolled further. Another photo. Me laughing at something I barely remembered laughing at. Another. Me looking down, adjusting the blanket. Angles I didn't know existed. Moments I didn't know were captured. The username posting then was his. The caption was casual. Something about people watching. Something about vibes. Nothing explicitly cruel. That almost made it worse. The comments underneath were quiet, knowing. People discussing me like I was scenery. I felt sick. My hands were shaking so bad I had to put the phone down. I paced my live space like it was too small to contain the feeling. Then I picked the phone back up and kept reading even though I didn't want to. He had replied to comments, explained where it was taken, said he always documented first impressions, said candid shots were more honest. Honest. That word burned. I checked the timestamps. Some of the photos were taken when I remembered seeing the glow. Others were taken when I hadn't noticed anything at all. Angles from behind, from the side, zoomed. I went back through my memory of the night, rewatching it with new context. Every moment shifted. Every smile felt stolen. Every relaxed second turned into something else. I messaged him immediately, hands shaking, demanding he take them down. I didn't care how I sounded. I didn't care about being polite. He replied quickly, too quickly, said it was a private forum, said no one knew who I was, said I was overreacting, said it was art. That word again, used like a shield. I told him I didn't consent. I told him to delete them. He said he would think about it. Think about it, like my face was a request. I reported the posts. The forum mods responded hours later, saying they didn't see a violation. The photos weren't explicit. My name wasn't mentioned. The policy was vague. The harm felt very real anyway. The next day, more photos appeared. Same thread. Different angles. He added context. Things he remembered about me. Nothing identifying, but intimate enough to feel invasive. My stomach dropped all over again. I blocked him everywhere I could think of. It didn't matter. The forum wasn't connected. The images stayed. I started noticing the ripple effect. A stranger followed my social account with no mutuals. Then another. Then a message request that said nothing, just a blank profile viewing my stories. I locked everything down. Private, restricted. I still felt exposed. I stopped going out at night for a while. I stopped sitting near windows. Every time I saw someone lift their phone near me, my chest tightened. My body remembered even when my brain tried to forget. A week later, the thread disappeared. Either he deleted it or the mods finally took it down. I never got confirmation. The relief was muted. I knew screenshots existed. Once something is out, it never really goes back in. He sent one last message before I blocked that account too, said he didn't mean harm, said he thought I'd like seeing myself through his eyes. That sentence made my skin crawl. I didn't reply. I didn't owe him anything. Even now, months later, I still think about those photos. Not what they showed, but what they took. Moments that were mine until they weren't. Comfort I didn't realize I had lost until it was gone. Sometimes I catch myself adjusting my posture in public, not because I want to look better, but because I want to be harder to capture. Like that's even possible. I learned how thin the line is between being seen and being taken. I learned how quiet that line can be when it's crossed. The moment she said it, the room didn't change at all, which somehow made it worse. The lights didn't flicker. No one gasped. The barista kept wiping the counter like nothing important had just been dropped on the table between us. Everything stayed normal except me, and that disconnect made my head feel floaty, like I was watching my own life from a step behind. We were at a late-night tea house that stayed open way past when it should, the kind of place with low couches, mismatched mugs, and plants that looked half real and half plastic. It smelled like citrus peel and incense. Soft music played just loud enough to make silence uncomfortable. She picked it because she said it felt calm, grounded. I remember thinking that was a good sign. The date had been fine up until then. Not amazing, not terrible. Just fine. We talked about school, work, random stories from growing up. She laughed easily, made eye contact. Nothing felt rushed. I even remember relaxing a little, sinking into the couch, thinking this would probably just fade into a polite goodbye. About an hour in, she got quiet. Not awkward quiet, intentional quiet. She set her mug down carefully and took out her phone, unlocking it but not looking at it yet. She took a breath like she was about to share something meaningful. Then she said she might be pregnant. No build-up, no context. Just dropped it into the space between us and leaned back to watch. My brain stalled. I felt heat rush into my face, then drain out just as fast. My mouth opened and closed without words coming out. I stared at the table, then at her, then back at the table like answers might be printed there. The first thing I thought was that it couldn't be true. The second thing I thought was that even if it wasn't, why was she saying this now? The third thing I thought was that everyone else in the room could probably hear my heartbeat. She didn't look upset. She didn't look scared. She looked curious. While I was still trying to form a sentence in my head, she picked up her phone and started typing. Not fast, deliberately, like she was logging data. She glanced up at my face, then back down, thumbs moving. I asked if she was serious. My voice sounded far away to me. She shrugged lightly and said she wasn't sure yet. Said she was late. Said she just wanted to be honest. She kept typing. My thoughts were crashing into each other. Timelines, logistics, impossibilities. None of it lined up. We barely knew each other. I tried to anchor to facts. I asked when she found out. She said she hadn't tested yet. She said she was waiting to see how she felt about things. She looked at me closely when she said that, eyes scanning my face like she was checking boxes. Then she typed again. I realized then that this wasn't about information. It was about reaction. She wasn't telling me something. She was watching me. I felt exposed in a way I hadn't before, like my thoughts were written on my face whether I wanted them there or not. I tried to steady myself. I told her I needed a second. She nodded and kept typing. I asked why she was writing things down. She said she liked to process in real time. Said it helped her remember how people respond to big moments. She said that casually, like it was a normal habit. I told her this was a lot to drop on someone. She agreed, nodded, and typed that too. I watched the reflection of her phone screen in the window beside us. Lines of text stacking up. Bullet points, maybe. I couldn't tell. My chest felt tight. I tried to slow my breathing. I told her that if this was true, it was serious and needed to be handled carefully. She smiled faintly and said seriousness looks different on everyone. Then she typed again. I asked what she wanted from me in that moment. She paused her typing finally and looked up fully. She said she wanted to see if I could stay calm. Said panic told her a lot about a person. That sentence made my stomach drop. I realized I was being tested, not just emotionally, but evaluated, like my reaction would determine something important she had already decided. I felt anger flicker under the shock, not loud anger, quiet, heavy. I told her I wasn't comfortable with this, that it felt manipulative. She frowned slightly, then typed again, slower this time. She said she didn't mean to upset me. She said she believed honesty early saved time later. She said some people ran when faced with responsibility, and she needed to know who she was dealing with. Her eyes stayed on me the whole time. I told her that responsibility wasn't something you spring on someone without context. I told her this wasn't fair. My voice shook despite my best effort. She nodded, thoughtful, and typed. Then she turned the phone slightly toward me, not enough to read everything, but enough to see words like initial response and emotional regulation. That's when something in me snapped into clarity. This wasn't a conversation. It was a study. I stood up slowly. My legs felt stiff, like they had forgotten how to work. She looked surprised finally. Asked where I was going. I told her I needed to leave. Now. She frowned and said she hadn't finished. She said she still needed to see how I handled conflict. That sentence made my skin crawl. I told her to stop typing. She didn't. She said she wasn't posting anything. Just keeping notes. Just for herself. Like that made it better. I grabbed my jacket. My hands were shaking now. No point hiding it. I told her this wasn't okay, that she crossed a line. She looked genuinely confused, like she hadn't considered that possibility. She said she thought I'd appreciate transparency. She said this was important information. She said my reaction mattered. She typed one more thing and locked the phone. I walked out without waiting for a response. The bell above the door chimed loudly, cutting through the soft music. Outside, the cold air hit my face, and I sucked in a breath like I'd been underwater. I stood on a sidewalk for a minute, staring at nothing, letting my heart slow down. My phone buzzed. A message from her popped up almost immediately. She said she was disappointed. She said I shut down instead of engaging. She said that told her a lot. I didn't reply. I blocked her and shoved the phone into my pocket like it was hot. On the walk home, my thoughts kept looping, not about the possibilities she mentioned, but about the way she watched me, the way she treated my reaction like content, like data to be saved and sorted. Later, back at my lib place, I sat on my bed and replayed the night in my head. Every glance at her phone, every pause before she typed, every moment where she seemed more interested in documenting than understanding. I checked my messages the next morning out of habit. Nothing. No follow-up. No clarification. Just silence. I don't know if she was telling the truth. I don't know if it was real or a tactic or something in between. I never found out. Maybe that was the point. The uncertainty lingered longer than an answer would have. Sometimes I still think about that moment. The calm way she said it, the way she watched my face change, the way she typed while my world tilted. It wasn't the statement itself that messed me up. It was realizing I was never a person in that moment. I was a response being measured. I knew I was done with the date before I even stood up, but my body didn't catch up until later. My brain made the decision quietly, like flipping a switch in the dark, while the rest of me kept nodding and pretending. That's how it started, not with fear, with that hollow feeling you get when you realize you're already planning your exit. We met at a small trivia bar tucked behind a grocery store, the kind of place that smells like spilled beer and fryer oil no matter how early it is. Chalkboards on the wall, handwritten categories, teams shouting answers like they were fighting for their lives. It was loud enough to feel safe. I picked it on purpose. He was fine at first. Not charming, not awful, just there. We sat on stools near the back, yelling answers we mostly got wrong, laughing when other teams booed. It felt normal. I relaxed more than I usually do on first dates. I hated myself for that later. About an hour in, my energy dropped. Not because of anything specific, just that internal clock saying enough. I checked my phone and said I needed to head out. Early morning, long day, nothing dramatic. His face changed, but only slightly, like someone catching themselves in a reflection. He said okay, but then started listing reasons to stay. One more round, the final question. The walk home would be nicer later. I smiled and shook my head, stood up anyway. Outside, the air felt cooler and quieter. The noise of the bar shut behind me like a door closing on a stage. I took a breath I didn't know I was holding. I started walking toward the street without looking back. He followed. I heard his footsteps before I heard his voice. Quick, close. He caught up easily and walked beside me like we were still together, like nothing had changed. He said we didn't have to end it yet. Said we were having fun. Said I was misreading the night. I told him I was tired, that I wanted to go home. He nodded but kept walking, matched my pace. That's when my chest tightened. He started bargaining. Said just 5 more minutes. Said we could sit somewhere quieter. Said he would walk me part of the way. Every suggestion framed like a compromise, like I was being unreasonable for not meeting him halfway. I slowed down. Told him again I wanted to be alone. He laughed softly and said I didn't have to be dramatic. That word again. Dramatic. It always lands like a slap. I pulled my phone out to call a ride. He reached over casually and pressed the screen dark with his finger, like he was helping. Said I didn't need to rush. Said we could figure it out together. His hand stayed too close to mine after hovering. I stepped away and unlocked it again. He stepped with me. Blocked the light from a street lamp. Said calling someone made it feel serious. Said people would get the wrong idea. Said he didn't want anyone thinking he did something wrong. That sentence made my stomach drop. We were already in a story I didn't agree to be in. I tried to move around him. He adjusted, still smiling, still calm. Said I was overthinking. Said he just wanted to talk. Said I owed him that much since he'd stayed the whole night. Owed. That word made my hands shake. I looked around. The parking lot was mostly empty. A couple cars pulled out, headlights sweeping past and disappearing. The grocery store sign hummed overhead. I felt suddenly very small in that open space. I told him I was calling someone now. He shook his head and gently pushed my phone down again. Not hard, just enough. Said he didn't want to escalate things. Said calling someone would make it a scene. Said scenes ruin lives. His voice stayed low and even. That was the scariest part. No yelling, no anger, just pressure, layered and constant. He switched tactics, said he was hurt, said he thought I was different, said he opened up to me, said walking away like this was cruel. Each sentence felt like a weight being added to my chest. I told him to move. My voice shook. He frowned slightly and said he would, but only after we talked it through, said he needed closure, said I could give him that. I stepped backward toward the curb. He stepped forward, still not touching, still blocking. I felt trapped without being cornered, which somehow felt worse. I tried to unlock my phone again. He noticed and shifted closer, enough that his arm blocked my view of the screen. Said there was no need to get anyone else involved. Said we were adults. Said we could handle this privately. I felt tears sting my eyes and hated it. I hated giving him that. He noticed anyway and softened his voice. Said he didn't want me upset. Said he just cared. Said he followed me because he was worried. Worried people don't stop you from calling for help. A car pulled into the lot then, slow, headlights bright. I raised my voice without fully meaning to, said I needed space. Heads turned in the car. He froze for half a second. Then he leaned in and whispered that embarrassing him wouldn't end well. Said people jumped to conclusions. Said he could explain things in ways that didn't favor me. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I took another step back and nearly lost my balance off the curb. Adrenaline surged. I yelled louder this time, said I was leaving and he needed to move. My voice echoed off the building. He stepped aside immediately. The switch was instant, smiled back, hands up, said he didn't realize I felt that way, said I didn't have to yell, said he was just trying to be nice. I didn't wait. I unlocked my phone with shaking hands and called a ride. I walked toward the brightest spot in the lot and stood there until the car arrived. He hovered a few steps away, not approaching, watching. When the car pulled up, he stepped forward again like he might say something else. I got in fast and slammed the door. The locks clicked, and I finally breathed. As we pulled away, I saw him standing there in the mirror, already looking annoyed, already typing on his phone. I didn't want to know what he was writing. My phone buzzed before we hit the main road. Messages from him came in fast, apologizing, then blaming, then saying I misunderstood, then saying I hurt him, then saying he hoped I felt safe because he could have made things difficult. I blocked him halfway through the ride. My hands were still shaking when I did it. Back at the place, I locked the door and leaned against it, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor. My legs felt weak. My chest hurt like I had run too far. Nothing else happened after that. No showing up. No more messages. But the night stuck with me. The way outside didn't mean free. The way calm words were used like restraints. The way asking to leave turned into a negotiation I never agreed to enter. Now, every time I step outside after a date, I pause and listen. Not for footsteps exactly. Just for that feeling. The one that tells me whether outside actually means over. I didn't know how fast a normal afternoon could turn into something that felt permanent until it happened to me. 1 second, we were just two people sitting on a bench with paper cups sweating onto concrete, and the next second, my name felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. I didn't feel scared at first. I felt confused. The fear came later when confusion stopped working. We met at an outdoor market by the river, the kind that pops up on weekends with food trucks, handmade jewelry, and street performers who think they're subtle but aren't. It was loud, bright, and packed with people drifting in loose circles. I liked it because it felt public in a good way. Open, breathable. Nothing bad happens in the middle of a crowd, right? She showed up wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. She hugged me hello like we'd known each other longer than we had. I didn't mind. It felt friendly. We grabbed food, wandered between stalls, laughed at overpriced art. The date wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. Just kind of flat. I was already thinking this would end politely and quietly. We sat down near the edge of the market where the noise dipped a little. People walked past constantly, strollers, dogs, kids with sticky hands. A guy nearby played guitar badly and didn't care. Everything felt normal enough that my guard dropped. We talked about surface stuff, where we grew up, what we did during the week. She asked a lot of questions, but didn't always listen to the answers. I noticed that, but it didn't feel dangerous, just awkward. About 40 minutes in, I checked my phone and said I should probably head out soon. I had errands. Real ones, not an excuse. She nodded slowly and said okay. Then she went quiet. I thought she was disappointed. I was about to reassure her when she stood up suddenly and took a step back from me. Her body language changed so fast it made my head spin. Then she accused me of something serious. Not vague, not misunderstood. Serious enough that a couple people nearby turned their heads immediately. Serious enough that my stomach dropped straight through the ground. I froze. I didn't understand what she was saying at first. My brain tried to catch up, tried to find context, tried to make it make sense. It didn't. She kept talking louder now, using words that carry weight. Words people react to. Words that don't need proof in the moment because the moment itself becomes proof. People stopped walking. Phones came out. Not all at once, but fast enough to notice. I saw screens lifting, angles adjusting. The air shifted. The market noise dipped like someone turned a dial. I said her name. I told her she was wrong. I told her to stop. My voice sounded small compared to hers. She took another step back like she was protecting herself. That move changed everything. Someone shouted for security. Someone else started filming closer. I could feel eyes on me from every direction, sticky and judging and already deciding. I tried to explain. I tried to say nothing like that happened. My words tangled. I could hear how defensive I sounded and hated it. Defensiveness looks bad on camera. Everyone knows that. She cried suddenly. Not messy crying, controlled, loud enough. She covered her face with her hands, but left enough space to peek through her fingers. She watched reactions while pretending not to. A woman near us told her she was brave. A guy told me to back up. I hadn't moved. I was still standing exactly where I had been, feet rooted to the pavement like it might open under me. I felt dizzy. The crowd pressed closer without touching. The guitarist stopped playing. The silence was thick and wrong. She kept talking, adding details now, small ones. Things that sounded specific enough to be believable, but not specific enough to be checked. She said my name again. I heard someone repeat it. I looked around for help, for someone official, for anyone who could pause this. Security hadn't arrived yet. Phones were still up, recording, archiving. I realized this wasn't just happening. It was being saved. I raised my hand slightly, not sure why, like I was trying to show I wasn't a threat. Someone yelled at me to put them down. I did. I didn't know what the right move was anymore. I said I was leaving. I took a step back. Someone stepped in front of me, told me to stay put. Said it would look worse if I ran. Worse than what? I wanted to ask. I didn't. She watched me carefully while pretending not to. Every time I opened my mouth, she spoke over me. Every time I stopped, she filled the silence with another statement. The rhythm was controlled, practiced. Security finally arrived. 2 people in bright shirts pushing through the crowd. They separated us physically. That part felt unreal, being guided away like I was already guilty of something I couldn't even fully name. They asked questions, not many, just enough to keep things calm. She answered loudly. I answered quietly. Cameras leaned in for both. Someone asked me if I had anything to say. I said I didn't know what was happening. I said none of it was true. My voice cracked. I hated that. The security people told me I needed to leave the area. For safety. My safety, they said. I almost laughed. I didn't. As I walked away, the crowd parted just enough to let me through. Phones followed. I kept my head down, hands visible, heart pounding. I could hear her voice behind me still talking, still shaping the story. I didn't run. I walked. I didn't want to give anyone that clip. I got 3 blocks away before my legs started shaking. I ducked into a convenience store and leaned against the cooler, breathing hard. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from friends. Notifications. I didn't open anything. When I finally did, I saw the clips. Shaky videos already uploaded. Captions already written. People arguing in comments about a version of me I didn't recognize. Her account had posted first. I sat on the curb outside the place later that night and stared at my phone until my eyes hurt. I reported posts. I messaged people. I typed explanations and deleted them. Nothing felt right. Everything felt like it would make it worse. By morning, the market had moved on. New stories, new clips, but the old ones stayed. Screenshots don't disappear just because attention shifts. She never contacted me again. No follow-up. No clarification. Just silence after the noise. Nothing legal came of it. Nothing official. Just that public moment frozen in other people's feeds. Just that version of me walking away while a crowd decided what I was. Even now, when I'm in public and someone raises their voice nearby, my chest tightens. When I see a phone pointed in my direction, my stomach drops. I learned how fast a story can be written without you. How little room there is to correct it once it starts. I didn't lose everything, but I lost something. Trust, maybe ease. The belief that being in public means being safe. I didn't realize I was being measured until he told me the score. That's the part that stuck. Not the discomfort itself, not even the way the night dragged on longer than it should have, but the moment he framed it like a test I had knowingly taken, like my reactions were data and my leaving was a wrong answer. We met at a board game cafe tucked under an overpass, the kind of place with shelves full of mismatched boxes and tables scared from years of spilled drinks and arguments over rules. It smelled like cardboard and coffee that had been sitting too long. I picked it because games give you something to do with your hands, something to hide behind if conversation stalls. He showed up carrying a backpack that looked too full for a date. He joked about always being prepared. I laughed because it seemed harmless. We ordered drinks and picked a game I barely remembered how to play. I liked that it required cooperation. I thought that meant something. The first weird thing was how he insisted on explaining every rule twice. Not just clarifying, but correcting me when I hadn't even spoken yet. He hovered his hand over the board when it was my turn, pointing, suggesting, steering. I told myself he was just enthusiastic. People get like that with games. Then he started changing rules mid-round. Small things. Who went first? How many turns counted? When I pointed it out lightly, he smiled and said flexibility was important. Said rigid people were exhausting. That sentence made my shoulders tense. As the night went on, the discomfort stacked quietly. He interrupted me often, but only after I finished a thought, like he wanted to show he listened before overriding it. He teased me about being slow, about overthinking. He laughed when I stopped smiling, like that was part of the fun. I tried to reset the vibe, suggested a different game, suggested food, suggested we just talk instead. He agreed to each thing, but made it feel like a concession, like I was already asking for too much. When I excused myself to the bathroom, I stayed in there longer than necessary, staring at my reflection, trying to decide if I was imagining things. Nothing had happened that I could point to. Nothing obvious. Just a steady drip of unease. When I came back, he had rearranged the board again. He said he thought it would be more challenging this way. I felt stupid for caring, but my chest tightened anyway. I told him I might head out soon. I said it casually, like I always do, hoping it would soften the moment. He looked disappointed, then curious. Asked why. I said I was tired. He nodded slowly and said tiredness was often avoidance in disguise. That annoyed me. More than annoyed. It made me feel seen in a way I didn't consent to. I said I just wanted to go home. That should have been enough. He leaned back in his chair and studied me like a puzzle. Said it was interesting how people reacted to pressure. Said most people didn't even realize when they were uncomfortable. Said tolerance was a useful trait. That word again. Tolerance. It landed wrong. I stood up and started gathering my things. My heart was racing, but I felt clear. Done. I didn't want to analyze anymore. I just wanted out. That's when he said it. He told me the date had been about seeing how much discomfort I would tolerate. He said it calmly, like he was sharing a fun fact. Said he liked to push boundaries early to see who stayed. Said it saved time. I froze with my bag half on my shoulder. My ears rang. I asked if he was serious, even though I already knew the answer. He smiled and nodded, said he had been adjusting things on purpose, said he noticed every time I hesitated, every time I tried to smooth things over, said I did better than most, but not well enough. He said I failed by leaving. That sentence hit me harder than everything else, not because I cared about his approval, but because of the certainty in his voice, Like he genuinely believed he was right and I was wrong. Like leaving a situation that felt bad was a flaw. I felt heat rush into my face, then drain out, leaving me cold. I told him that was messed up. My voice shook. I didn't care. He shrugged and said not everyone was built for intensity. Said relationships required endurance. Said people who left early were unreliable. I stepped back, suddenly aware of how close he was. The cafe felt quieter than before, like the shelves were listening. A couple at another table glanced over, then back to their game. I told him this wasn't okay, that he manipulated me. He laughed softly and said manipulation was a strong word. Said he preferred the term filtering. That was it. I turned and walked toward the door without another word. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my keys and had to crouch to pick them up. He didn't help, he watched. As I reached the door, he called after me, not angry, just disappointed. Said I could have learned something if I stayed. Said I shouldn't take it personally. Said failure was just feedback. I didn't look back. Outside, the air under the overpass was cold and loud with traffic. Cars rushed past like nothing important had happened. I stood there for a minute, breathing hard, letting my heart slow down. My phone buzzed before I even started walking. A message from him came through, already framing the night like a case study, saying I reacted predictably, saying my exit confirmed his theory, saying he hoped I'd reflect. I blocked him mid-message. My hands were steady by then. That felt important. On the walk home, I replayed everything with new context. Every small discomfort suddenly had a label. Every moment I second-guessed myself made sense. I hated how close I had come to staying just to prove something. Back at my lib place, I kicked my shoes off and sat on the floor, back against the couch, staring at the wall. My chest still felt tight, but underneath that was something else. Anger, maybe. Clarity. Nothing else happened after. No apology. No follow-up beyond what I blocked. Just that night sitting heavy in my memory. Now, when something feels off, I don't negotiate with it. I don't wait to see if it gets worse. I don't wonder if I'm being dramatic. I remember the way he said I failed by leaving, and I know that leaving was the only part I got right.